talking to us. And they are both bioinformaticians, and they're both called Ilya. So I really had to press them to find the difference between the two. But it turns out that one is a bioinformatics who really he's a hidden bioinformatician, but he really is a mathematician. And the other Ilya is a real bioinformatician, but then really he is a biologist. Now, one of the quizzes of today will be to figure out who is what. Which Ilya is what trade. But I think they are both connected with the Biosoft company in Novosibirsk, but also with the Federal Research Center for Information and Computational Technology in Novosibirsk. And they will talk about development and tailoring of COVID-19 models in bio-UML, both in the context of Novosibirsk and Moscow and some other regions that previously were thought to be part of the Soviet Union, but now they're called by names like France and Italy and Germany. So, Ilya, please go ahead.
Dear colleagues, students, listeners, so as Hans told, I am Ilya Kisilov, I am from Novosibirsk, Russia, and today I and my colleague Ilya Berlin will talk about our efforts in modeling of COVID-19 epidemic in Russian regions as well as some European countries. So here is the outline of our lecture. We will have two speakers, but for your convenience, both of us are called Ilya. So first of all, Ilya will talk about our tool we are developing and also using for mathematical modeling. Then Ilya will talk about extending of the model created by Hans Westerhoff and Alexei Kolodkin and its application to Russian regions. Then Ilya will talk about further development of the model and a little bit about agent-based model, which we also are working on. And finally, you guessed it, of course, Ilya will make a live demonstration of our web tool for modeling of different scenarios in different regions. So first of all, BioML is a tool which is in the development for more than 18 years now here in Novosibirsk, and it spans huge range of tasks in systems biology and bioinformatics, including mathematical modeling, data analysis, genome browsing, and other stuff. Here, today we will focus on the part of it, including visual modeling with different formats such as ODEs, stochastic models, modular models, agent-based models, support for different standards for systems biology, including SBGN for visual representation, SBML for exchange, and ZML for describing experiments with the model, and also different model analysis. BioML is available both as a web tool in your browser and as a standalone application, which you can download and install on your computer, whatever platform you use, Windows, Mac, or Linux. And those are some important links for you if you want to try BioML yourself. Someone may even say that BioML is one of the best simulators in the world, actually. In recent publication, authors who are not in any way associated with us, I promise, compared different simulators according to their speed on the set of models from BioModels database. And as you can see, BioModel here, with light blue results, showed best results for many models and quite good for all of them. And BioModel is also the only tool which passes all tests from SBML data, SBML test suite, which was created by authors of SBML. This means that BioML supports all features of SBML correctly. Yeah, and as you can see, for example, Copasi here passes only 74% of tests. So we are very proud with this result. Here is how BioML looks like. So you can see repository for models you can work with, currently opened model, and tabs to work with this model. So one of the main features of BioML is a visual modeling, which means that user works and creates a model as a visual diagram. For example, here in SVGN format. And each element of this diagram is associated with some mathematical object, be it equation or variable, and also with some biological object in databases. So you can click on the object, edit its information, its initial value, rate rule or something. Then you run simulation, which generates executable Java code, which produce simulation results. Of course, user won't see Java code. User will just see simulation results. Another important feature is that you can export this SVGN diagram into other formats, for example, into SBML format, which you can then re-import into other tools, for example, to Capacity, and then reproduce results you obtained in BioML in Capacity. And this is very important for reproducible science. Also, BioML have different analysis with the model, but I want to demonstrate you one curious feature which was implemented only recently, but I used it a lot when was fitting parameters of the COVID models. So this is the manual parameter fitting. Here you can see experimental data and simulation results. You naturally want them to agree. And you can see a list of all model parameters, their values, and steps for their values. For example, we have this parameter n, and we have this button, plus and minus, which increases or decreases value of parameter n according to its step. So you can just click this button and automatically see how the behavior of the model changed. And like that, playing with parameters, decreasing and increasing their values, you can fit model by hands, almost like playing a game. So I find it quite fun, actually. So now I will give the floor to my colleague Ilya Berin, who will present you modeling of the COVID-19 epidemic.
Well, so hello everyone. Can you
Yes,
see my screen? Okay,
Yes,
great.
we can see your screen.
So many thanks, Ilya and Hans, for the puzzling, I would say, introduction. I'm going to talk about our initial extension of the SEER model developed by Alexei and Hans Westerhoff in order to simulate the epidemic in two Russian cities, Moscow and Siberian capital of the Russian Novosibirsk, which are located more than 3,000 kilometers from each other. So I guess you're already familiar with the model structure, the system of ordinary differential equations and predictions that were made using simulations in Capacity. This model actually differs from most SEER models by differentiating between tested and non-tested infected subjects. So I would only like to emphasize that this model was used as a base model in order to describe current epidemic in different countries and regions, as well as to predict further virus spread and mortality rate in BioML integrated platform. So, as a typical for the initial step of the model development process, we made several assumptions. First of all, a non-susceptible subpopulation was included in the model in accordance with the current publications where the presence of pre-existing antibodies recognizing SARS-CoV-2 in uninfected individuals was demonstrated. And we assumed the fraction of this non-susceptible in the population to be from 25 to 50%. And a total infection coefficient is represented by a linear function of the weighted impact of testing and non-testing subpopulations, which are infected with and without symptoms, relatively total population, and considering the current state of the lockdown in a region. Thirdly, asymptotic people cannot die from COVID-19 and recover with time. However, they can infect others, and we assume that the fraction of asymptotic among susceptible is 50% according to the recently published systematic review and the meta-analysis of cohorts or cross-sectional studies for systematically tested populations, regardless of symptoms for COVID-19 or case series of any size reporting contact investigation of asymptotic index patients. So the resulting core model comprises 18 species or reaction participants, 23 parameters, 2 discrete events to count daily statistic for registered, recovered, and deceased individuals, and an emergence of additional or extra intensive care units in a certain region, and a list of events reflecting non-pharmaceutical interventions and government actions to curb the virus spread in specific regions. According to the above-mentioned assumptions, further modifications and improvements of the core model were as follows. So first of all, we have added such subpopulation as non-susceptible, non-tested, and non-susceptible tested. Secondly, as I said before, asymptotic non-tested and asymptotic tested people cannot die from COVID-19 and recover with time. with time. However, they can infect others. Moreover, moreover, critical patients or critically symptomatic patients who have been tested and require intensive care unit or ICU in order to survive, as well as a critical on ICU, which means critical symptomatic patients in intensive therapy and potentially under artificial ventilation were taken into account in the extended model. A calculation of free ICUs, its expense and release have been incorporated into extended model. And the most important thing is that an influx of infected ones arrived from other cities or regions has been added according to the official data from Novosibirsk and Moscow authorities, meaning that we assume that the infections in any region we model have started from a known number of imported cases from abroad. So the core model was further incorporated into the, we call this composite model, which specifies its context and adapts it to any particular region. I mean, Moscow, Novosibirsk, and as Hans said, former Soviet Union countries like Germany, France, and Italy. For this purpose, we use a modular approach. The composite model sets almost all parameter values, such as total population, context level, ICU number, specific to a given country or region, and contains additional national events described with measures taken by countries, authorities, changes in national testing policy, infection imported from abroad, etc. So, however, some of the parameters are not available to change in the composite model, or they represent generalized parameters which are independent on the region. And all created models are available in SBML format for download, and we will demonstrate it further, or maybe next week during the BioML course. So in order to feed the model parameter values, we accumulated statistical data reflecting the daily and cumulative counts of COVID-19 subpopulations, registered, recovered, and deceased in Novosibirsk and Moscow regions. So this data was taken from the official coronavirus web channel of operational headquarters in Novosibirsk and Moscow, and to add discrete events reflecting non-pharmaceutical interventions and government anti-epidemic actions, we also used official medical recommendations, actions of the Russian Ministry of Health, the Russian Federal Service for Surveillance and Consumer Rights Protection and Human Well-being, which is called Rospotrebnadzor, or changes in COVID-19 legislations of the local authorities. For instance, to reproduce daily and cumulative statistics for Novosibirsk region, we used a number of events represented on this slide and corresponding to the next list of changes. For instance, at mid-March, if I remember correctly, most Russian regions have gone into the lockdown to prevent the spread of the virus. Then, end of May, early June, the Ministry of Health of Russian Federation released temporary medical recommendations for the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 patients. Then in August, this ministry released an updated criteria to consider a patient as infected, and Russian schools across the country were reopened for the new school year on September 1st. It is worth to note that the extended model was fitted to publish statistical data for Novosibirsk by mid-June, as you can see on this slide, and the subsequent model fitting was based only on variation or discrete changes of several parameters, like social distance or rate of testing. So we have also conducted model fitting to COVID-19 statistics in Moscow. And as you can see on this slide, simulations of registered, recovered, and deceased subpopulation to reproduce the corresponding statistical data reasonably well. However, it is worth to note that values of the parameters significantly differ between two regions. And I will talk about that a little bit later. Using the model adapted to the current COVID-19 statistic, we can perform computational simulations in order to check, or if you like, to predict further dynamic behavior for different scenarios. For example, on this slide, you can see outcomes of one of such scenario. We suppose that anti-epidemic measures were cancelled on December 2nd, today. That in terms of the model corresponds to the value of social distance parameter was taken back to pre-pandemic level. As a result, the number of daily new registered with COVID-19 will grow up in both cities by January of the next year. Moreover, we have added an opportunity to estimate the vaccination effect on pandemic dynamics using the model. The model predicts that vaccination of Novosibirsk population, which is affected today, will not lead to any meaningful, as you can see on this slide, any meaningful change in the number of daily cases. While the vaccination that was effective, for example, 2 months ago on October 2nd, will result in much drop of this indicator, assuming that a herd immunity has potentially been reached in Novosibirsk today. While the corresponding model fitted to COVID-19 statistics in Moscow predicts the higher level of daily vaccination, of course, considering the size of city population and capital Moscow status, will lead to significant change in dynamic even from today. Moreover, this number of daily vaccines does not look like infeasible, taking into account that Russian government and developers of the Sputnik coronavirus vaccine plan to manufacture 5 million doses per month by December or January this year, and 80 million doses per year per next year. So as a result, both fitted models provide a computational tool to consider different anti-epidemic scenarios in order to predict their outcomes for Russian regions. However, as I mentioned before, values of these parameters significantly differ between two regions. So to overcome this limitation, or even, I would say, shortcoming of the model, we have continued to pursue the model development. And the first speaker, again, Ilya, will talk about this model modification and results after a short coffee break. And moreover, feel free to ask both Ilyas about already presented part of the lecture while enjoying your coffee or whatever you're gonna drink.
Very good. Oh.
Thank you to both. Maybe there are some questions for this first part, or we should go just for the coffee and then we ask question at the end. Is also
both. So who stays can ask question, and who goes for coffee can bring them with a cup.
Yeah. So maybe I can ask a question. So for the fitting, when you say in the two cities, there were of course like difference in the fitting, so difference in the parameter. So which are the parameters that differ the most between the two cities?
So good question. If I remember correctly, the most different parameters were related actually with infected impact for different subpopulations that in biological meaning is not intuitive understanding, because it seems that infection impacts for different subpopulation in different Russian regions, despite that it's quite homogeneous population, should be quite similar. So we think that it's really shortcoming of the model right now, and we hoping to overcome this limitation.
It might easily be that indeed maybe in one of the two cities there are some of these cases of super spreader, for example, you know, because we always assume homogeneous population and homogeneous infectiousness. But it might be that in one of the two cities there were some, I don't know, hustle going around, super infectious, and in one of the two cities you have more infectiousness. But
okay. In this case, generally speaking, I would say that it's limitation of the SEER model or OD models.
Okay.
If you want to consider the super spreader events in this type of model, I would say that it's limitation.
I'm not sure that's a limitation. One could also put a super spreader in a model like that, just having yet another type of person with a much higher infectivity coefficient.
But you will have like number of compartments will multiply, and then
No,
you
just
will
one
need,
more compartment, that is. It's not like an agent-based modeling where you have then immediately many more compartments. But here you would just have a compartment of a super spreader.
Yeah, but super spreader will be tested and go to super spreader tested.
Yeah, so it's two then. Not that much.
At least, yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But if you like try to introduce age here, then you will double all the compartments probably.
Yeah.
And there are such models actually, like they different even introduce like 3 or 4 different age groups, but it's like a very large model, and you have many more parameters also.
Yeah, obviously.
But is it easy enough in your structure? In Copasi, it's not particularly easy that you just sort of duplicate a model, so you get twice the same model in the same model, right? So you duplicate everything, and then you have old and young, and then you make a few connections. Is that easy in your structure to do?
I think yes. The only problem is that those models like should interact, because like older people will infect younger people and vice versa. So we can actually have two like such blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Connect them in some way. So it's possible, and maybe it's easier in that way because you can like copy paste all of this twice.
And then you automatically also have the differential equations, the rate equations there, if you copy that in the diagram. That how it works?
Of course.
Hard to believe.
Exactly. The only thing, as we mentioned before, you will need to do just to parameterize all subcompartments in your composite model. I mean, for age group.
Yeah, but you start with the same parameters, and then you check that it works, and then you adjust parameters one by one, so the probability of error is low. That's how we could do it, how one could do it.
Yeah. We planned it for some time, but never like get time to do.
So did you have a nonlinearity in the model? So because there's lots of travel between Novosibirsk and Moscow, at least for Novosibirsk, most travel comes from Moscow, I suppose. Or did you do something where you had the influence of the changes in the Moscow model on the Novosibirsk model? I understood that you had external infection, but also the dynamics of the external infection, running two models in parallel and then?
We haven't done that.
Yeah, at this moment we didn't.
Would that be difficult to do?
In modeling terms, no, but you will need data.
The only problem is just to extract the correct data.
But you already have the data because you have a Moscovite model and a Novosibirsk model.
Yeah, but you'll need data like for traveling.
Yeah, but that's easy.
Lockdown, I think.
I mean, travel is easy. It's just the number of airplanes between Moscow and Novosibirsk per day. Because nobody else nowadays travels by chariot and horse.
But so many travelers by train, it's Russia.
Oh yeah, that's right. Orient Express, yes.
Yeah, and I think maybe with lockdown, I don't know if it affects trains much, probably. No. But I think more people could use train because it's like more sneaky than airplane.
But also they don't get cancelled. Like I also used to travel to Italy by train because all my flight got cancelled all the time. Instead by train you can easily travel. So I think it's easier to travel.
Yeah,
by
but don't
train.
forget that's Italy, Stefania. Let me tell you about the trip from Novosibirsk to Irkutsk. We wanted to do that by train, and it turned out it was 30 hours.
Yeah.
And that is just Irkutsk, Novosibirsk. If you do Moscow, Novosibirsk, it's probably 5 days by train. This country is
No,
No,
two
no,
and a
no.
half, 2.5 days.
Two.
well,
Two and a
okay.
half. 2.5.
So three. We took to Baikal. It was 3 nights, but only 2 days. But
Yeah.
amazing days and nights.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We didn't sleep. We just were sticking on windows. Hans, but do you need this exact data? This is something you can just make a variable and see how the model behavior, or if you increase,
Yeah.
just artificial numbers.
Right. It would be nice to try, and it is good to hear you say that I should not be too nervous about the data, because you're telling me that I should do data.
No, but you can check if model covers
Yeah.
these questions. I also have a question concerning the parameters you have now. There are not so many, and I'm sure you did something like parameter sensitivity comparison between different data sets. Have you done this?
Sensitivity analysis we haven't done yet, but it's
Ah.
possible because we have a specialized model to conduct the sensitivity analysis for this type of models as well.
Okay. I mean, to me, it would be interesting to know if a parameter sensitivity change as a model sensitivity to parameters changes on different data sets like Luxembourg and Novosibirsk. But this would maybe show which additional compartments, as you say, I have to stick on your language, are needed.
Subpopulations.
Yeah, because maybe the age can be also added as a parameter and not as a new network. As a parameter in every group here.
But how would you?
Ranges, like before 15 to 40. I don't know how technically.
So each of these subgroup is just a variable. It's a number of people of those group.
Yeah, but they are all together. But there is no problem to give them an attribute of age or age range without splitting in different compartments.
Maybe I'm not quite understanding.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's my.
So the
I think
idea
it's a nice idea that you make an entity, and you give the entity a property that is sort of its age distribution.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Yeah.
And then try to do it from there. So you talk in terms of, you model entities that have distributed properties. Yeah, in principle possible. I can't oversee whether you can do it. And maybe it is actually faster than stochastic differential equations. Yeah. Yeah, nice idea.
And with this, you could check, for example, without having data about ages, you can just run simulate the model with different set of these attributes. Yeah. So one society is more young, another, but you use the same data set. So it will say, okay, it's very sensitive to this age, or it's very sensitive. I think it's the same with this disseminator. They are not only high disseminators, they are also people with low and zero dissemination. Now you can kiss them, they are highly infected, but they do not. This is already published and clear. So that's the quality of dissemination power. There is a special term for this in the medicine, will be also such value for one attribute. of every person in a population. Or
Yeah.
maybe it only makes sense to assign this to infected persons, of course.
Yeah.
Guys, what do you think to start again?
Yeah.
Okay, can start. So I'm ready.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, so should I start, right? Okay. So in this part of the presentation, I will talk about further development of the model and its application to European countries. So we tried to overcome two problems. First, one is that when we fit it to Novosibirsk region and to Moscow, we effectively had two separate models with completely separate values of parameters. And one can assume that there should be parameters which should be specific to the virus itself and not specific to the particular region. So we will try to keep the number of parameters specific to a particular region at minimum. And the other one is that when we model those non-pharmaceutical government interventions and change the social distance parameter, we really don't know which government interventions how they translates to numerical values of this social distance parameter. So in many cases, we just assign some arbitrary value just to feed the data we observe. In order to overcome the second problem, we tried to use stringency index developed in the University of Oxford. So they gathered information about government interventions in more than 200 countries, including school closing, workplace closing, restrictions on gathering, and so on. Each of these components can have several values. For example, for school closing, 0 value means that there is no such government intervention enacted. And 3 means that this intervention is enacted at maximum level, all schools are closed, and everyone is moved to the distant education. So the weighted sum of these components constitutes stringency index, which goes from 0, no measures at all, to 100. Maximum possible measures are enacted. So here are the stringency indexes for countries we model. And for some of them, you can see well agreement between fall of the stringency index and the rise of the second wave. So here you can see a number of registered cases per day. So for example, in Russia and Italy, in Germany, we can see quite good correlation, especially in Russia and France. But in Italy, we do not see this correlation because the stringency index in Italy fell in May and the second wave raised only in August. So there is no such good correlation. And we will see what will it lead to. So here's how we changed our total infection coefficient. Before we had this formula with social distance parameter, which we changed as we like. Now we will replace it with stringency index, but slightly recalculated. We also introduced delay. We think that government interventions take its effect after some delay in time, and compliance of population, because in time, people tend to comply to government interventions less and less because they are tired from lockdown, and they want to go to party. So now we have this equation with these measures value instead of social distance. And also we have this parameter C, which is constant in time, and it's differentiates from country to country and reflects different contacts level in population for different countries. So now we cannot change these measures as we want at any time point. We just receive this as data from government interventions. So at the source of data, we used our World in Data website, which is a really great source for COVID-19 pandemic information. It aggregates daily updated information for more than 200 countries for all you need to cumulative cases, daily cases, reproduction rates, stringency index, occupied hospital beds, tests, and so on. We also modified model a bit. We differentiate between severity of symptoms. So now we have mildly symptomatic people who cannot die, instead they can recover, or progress to severely symptomatic people who now can either recover or die, or go to critically symptomatic people who will need ICU in order to recover. So we also have mild registered and severely registered as for all other groups of people. Also, we have introduced contact testing into the model. So we had previously random testing for healthy people and symptomatic testing for symptomatic people. Now we will also have contact testing reactions for people who are not symptomatic but were infected uh, sometime before. Those are infected in incubation period and asymptomatic people. So rate of this contact testing appeared to be very crucial for handling of COVID-19 pandemic. The model has 24 parameters. Among them, only 7 were individual for different countries. Among them are, of course, testing rates. They are different, but here it should be noted that we do not actually know how much of contact testing was done in different countries. We only have like overall testing, overall number of tests, and those contact testing parameter was estimated. We also have different contact level in population. And surprisingly, we had different severe and critical symptoms rate in different countries, which means that in our model in Italy, there are more severely ill people than in Germany. And we also have different ICU transfer rate values. So here, unity means that whenever patient needs ICU, he or she will immediately receive it. But lower level here means that there is some delay before patient will receive ICU and someone will die before getting ICU. We also have different compliance to government interventions. By the way, 2 values here means that this parameter changed at some point of time. And particularly here in Italy, we have very small value of compliance because the stringency index by itself could not describe the second wave. So as I told before, it is not in well correlation with it. So we needed to decrease this compliance in order for the model to reproduce the second wave. So this is some problem we need to address in the future. So here are the simulation results for Germany. So we trained the model until 9th of November, and then it's on its own against experimental data. As you can see, it's quite well agreed with it. We have registered cases, recovered, and deaths. On the lower chart, we have import from abroad. It was estimated for all countries to be 66 people per day from 15th of November to 26th of March, when European countries effectively closes their borders. And since then, we do not consider any infection import. And we have also stringency index in time for Germany. Similar results are for France. But here it should be noted that the model predicts much more deceased people than there are in reality. And that is could be due to either improvements in treatment or mutations of virus or some other factor which was not yet included into the model and maybe should be included in the future. Unfortunately, the model could not predict pandemic progress for Italy. And that is probably due to the reasons I've told before, because with only this stringency index, we could not correctly predict the second wave. We can also play different scenarios. For example, here in Germany, we can change stringency index like from today to the level it had in May of 2020. And in that case, if we keep it that way through 2021, we will see that number of registered cases will be twice as low as if we keep the stringency index at the level it is now really. So we can play the scenarios, and Bertin will show you how it is done later. So further plans are to include more regions and to refine this set of parameters, which are individual for regions or should be common for all regions. We also want to use individual components of those stringency index, like school closing, workplace closing, because some of them may be more important than others, and some of them may interfere with others. So in order to do that, we need to estimate their individual effects on the pandemic. We also want to extend our model, introduce time delays for testing, incubation period, introduce different age groups, and also calculate reproduction coefficients, which are very important indicators of the pandemic. So RT is essentially how many people would infected person on average infect until the recovery or death. So imagine if any infected person will infect 2 other persons or even more than one person on average, then pandemic will grow exponentially. But if any infected person through their illness period will infect less than one person on average, then pandemic will die out eventually. So those models we described were all ordinary differential equations. And those models are widely used in epidemiology, but they have some inherent drawbacks. First of all, most of those models use mass action law, which may be quite unrealistic for some processes. And for the same reason, parameters of the model may have no sufficient physiological meaning and cannot be directly translated to characteristic of the virus, for example, such as, for example, duration of incubation period or duration of illness. It's also impossible to track fluctuations of epidemic spread, like local outbreaks, or super spreaders. It's as we discussed before, it's actually possible, but in many times it's very hard and demands increasing of the model variables very largely. So those models also doesn't consider for heterogeneity of population. It is hard to consider different patient groups. And it is also impossible to track infection on individual level. So those problems are addressed by agent-based modeling. Agent-based modeling is usually used when behavior of the system as a whole is very hard or even impossible to describe as a set of equations or something like this. In this case, you can describe parts of this model, and then behavior of the model of the system will arise from interactions of those parts. And those parts are called agents. So each agent has its inner state, which characterizes it. Agent also has some routine procedure which changes inner state in time. Agent also can receive signals, process them, and send signals to other agents or environment. So agents are interacting in some environment, and behavior of agent-based model emerges from interactions of those agents. So in our case, agents are patients, and their inner state describes their age, status, day of infection, infectiousness level, symptom severity, and so on. And their daily routine may be described, for example, by SBML model with ordinary differential equations or events, or more effectively by some arbitrary programming code, in this case Java code, in which we can do anything we want. For example, here, daily routine goes as follows. We increase infection day, then we check our status. If we are infected and we are at the end of the incubation period, then we became ill. Otherwise, if we are already ill and we are at the end of the first stage of our illness period, we recover if our symptoms are mild, or if our symptoms are severe, we go to hospital or to ICU. Another main important part of agent routine is infecting other. So every agent tries to contact some number of people and infect them. At this point, some random number is drawn, and if agent succeeds, another agent is created, describing infected person with his own characteristics and his own behavior. Another type of agents in the model is healthcare system, which describes number of hospital beds occupied, number of ICUs, testing regime, if we need to test anyone, if we test only symptomatic, if we enact contact tracing. And those two agents interact with each other. So patient can queue for testing, try to go to hospital, try to go to ICU, and healthcare will allow him or deny. So this is the overall of the model. Patients are creating new patients, and all of them are interacting with the healthcare system. And here we can see iterating through time for one agent. So it's very similar to the model we talked before. Like we have incubation period, symptomatic, critical or severely symptomatic. But so this is very similar to pictures we shown for OD model, but this is description of one patient, not for the group or population. So in BioML, agent-based model is presented as visual diagram as usual. So here all the Java code or agents are encapsulated into this block, and user can change some parameters which will go to this model, and also add events describing government interventions. User may even don't know what the model is inside of the block. It can be ODE model or agent-based model or some other type of model. But user can run simulation and get something like this. Here, at each run of agent-based model, we will get different results because agent models are inherently stochastic because we draw random numbers when trying to infect people. So each time we will have slightly or even not slightly different results. So in order to get reliable result, we need to simulate many times, like 100 or 1000 times. So final results look something like this. We have median value of registered infected persons and confidence interval. So here is the comparison between agent-based model and ODE. And as you can see, there looks very similar. Another good thing for agent-based model is that we can calculate reproduction number almost for free because we know exactly how many people each of our agents infected through its life course. So we can calculate a reproduction number very easily. And now Ilya Berdin will make a live demonstration of our web tool where one can play with those models, ODE and agent-based both, change their parameters and try to play different scenarios.
Okay, let's check out our web-based platform where both modeling approaches. Yes, I'm going to share the screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So let's check out web-based platform developed by our group where both modeling approaches that we described before may be used for simulation of outcomes of various existing, proposed, and new policies. So let's type the address, the address of the web platform. So I will try to do my best to present the clear as I can, but if it's quite fast for you, just let me know via Slack. So if you're not Russian speaking, just change the language clicking on the corresponding button upper right corner. So then you can select the different regions or countries you would like to model or verify the simulations and to look over the statistical data from official headquarters, etc. So Novosibirsk statistical data and results of model simulations are presented as default page, and I guess our European friends will not mind our Siberian-oriented start page. So here you can see on the start page the list of non-pharmaceutical interventions that we accumulate during the pandemic, so from the March till the current situation, including all government actions and lockdowns data and recovery, the opening of school, etc. So below you will see the daily statistic data and average curve. Here you can see the hover where all numbers are presented for recovered, registered, and deceased patients. So below you will see cumulative data. Cumulative below. So here we also accumulate data for daily statistics on or daily confirmed cases on intensive care units or ventilators in Novosibirsk. These data are available. So below you will see the cumulative confirmed cases for registered, recovered, and for example, you can see that at this time more than 20,000 of registered of patients were registered in Novosibirsk region, and we also accumulate data for number of tests conducted in Novosibirsk region and officially provided by our government. So if you would like to manipulate the chart by chart, you can, for example, to zoom in or zoom out specific part of the chart to dig into the data analysis or recover the data in more details, or you can to use auto scale to get back to take back the initial chart, or use the reset axis button. For example, let's check zoom out, then you can reset axis to the initial axis scale. Sometimes it can be very useful. I will demonstrate you later. So, students, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move further and let's consider the results of simulations for Novosibirsk, for instance. So to do that, you just click on the forecast button, forecast tab, where you will see the simulations result. And as it was demonstrated in our lecture, here you will get daily new confirmed cases for registered, recovered, and deceased infected patients. Below, and also on this chart, you can see that we also demonstrate the total infected per day. It means that this curve also includes data for non-tested or simulations for non-tested subpopulation. And you can see that, for example, at this moment, the registered number per day is approximately 200, while the actual or predicted number of infected per day in 10 times higher than registered.
What happened September 23? Because it went up vertically. What happened on September 23?
On September 23, we incorporated the specific event which corresponded to government actions when we increased the social distance factor up to 10.
Yeah, but it seems that it has a primary effect on the number of infected.
No,
increase later.
Yeah, I know. So we decreased the social distance factor to 3.
To model this rise
of the registered patient. So then you can see the, okay, I will zoom in the specific region in this chart. So here we will observe the total statistics of cumulative statistics for also for registered, for recovered, and deceased.
Ilya, can I interrupt you? Because Felicia asked in the chat, how did you program the website? In which language?
Oh, that's a question to Mikhail. Ilya, do you know the language that was
JavaScript.
used? JavaScript.
I mean, these graphics, we use library, it's Plotly, I think it's called Plotly.
Ah, yeah, Plotly, yeah, exactly. So here you can see, yeah, produced with Plotly.
And like the website is JavaScript, which is connected to our backend in BioML, where we use Java.
Thank you.
But I guess the most interesting part of this web platform we provide to check the results of some scenarios as I presented in our lecture. So, for example, you can see already introduced discrete events in our model to reproduce statistical data where we manipulate the values of different parameters, mostly social distance factor and testing rate. Also recovery rate when the medical recommendations, when new medical recommendations were introduced, and recovery was actually increased in Novosibirsk region.
Can I ask why it's called testing rate random?
It means that for some subpopulations, when we don't know the testing rate we used for infected patients, when you know that this person has some symptoms, we use a test for symptomatic patients.
It's the same as the initial model. So we have symptomatic test for symptomatic people and random testing for everyone else.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So you also can change the values of already introduced parameters, and let's do something new with our model. For example, let's assume that today we will change the social distance factor back to the initial value pre-pandemic level, assuming that all lockdowns and all isolations were cancelled in Novosibirsk, and we just add this discrete event in the list. Here you can see it below. Then if you like to observe two simulations and you want to save the previous one, just choose the show dashed previous result. Also, you can manipulate the forecast time, but as default we use the simulation per year. Then click on the start simulation button and wait for a while. You will see the progress bar. So as a result, you will see so many curves, yeah, in one chart. So to remove some of them for a while, just click on the corresponding curve in the legend. For example, you would like to observe and compare data for registered per day. Just click on that, recover it, new simulation for that, recover it, infected per day, and the same for statistical data. And here you will see the results of the model simulations in two cases.
I think you changed social distance at the start by accident.
You mean here, yeah. Let's do that again.
So December 2, they must be identical.
Let's check. And start simulation. Yeah, here we go. So you can compare the number of registered per day for different scenarios with and without social distance factor getting back to the pre-pandemic level. And so then again back to the scale, and if you would like to return to default events, just click on the corresponding button after all model manipulations. You will get the initial list of discrete events. Yeah, and also the same results for total statistics, total simulations. So according to the list, you can manipulate a set of parameters: recovery rate, recovery factor for asymptotic patients, social distance factor, availability of new ICU units. You can, for instance, assume that new ICU units appear in a specific region. Then you can change the rate of symptoms appear, testing rates for symptomatic and testing rate random. And also, as I demonstrated in our lecture, you can introduce vaccination rate and estimate the results of the vaccination on the pandemic outcome. For example, let's do it with Novosibirsk. Assume that from effective today, 50,000 vaccination will be available daily. And then, if you want to show this, then start simulation. Let's reduce the number of curves on in our chart. Yeah. So here you can see the result of the vaccination effect on the registered statistic. Assuming that at the end of March, we will approximately the end of pandemic. And the same manipulations you can make with the Moscow region. Germany. It seems that due to so many users on our web page, it's quite slow. Yeah. So, okay. It seems that it's necessary to refresh the page. Yeah, here is the statistical data for Germany. Let's consider the predictions. Yep. So here you can see the dots which correspond to statistic on registered per day and the simulation results for the same indicator. In regards to agent-based modeling, you can observe results only for Novosibirsk district at this moment. So just select the agent-based model, the specific selector, and as Ilya demonstrated in the lecture, you will get similar outcome predictions on the pandemic using agent-based simulation. For example, if you want to see the correspondence between model predictions on registered per day and real data. And also the total daily statistic for all infected, including non-tested and tested subpopulations. So I guess this is a great opportunity to check the different scenarios and use the web platform to predict or to observe any predictions on the pandemic outcome in different regions. And also you can develop your own model in the same terms for another countries. And we will update our web platform, including your model predictions and statistical data as well.
Thank you, Leah. So for next week, I guess, yeah, Hans, maybe we'll talk about the project that the students can do with you guys. So depending on the different level of preparation. So if you are a hard coder, maybe they can do also something more difficult. Yeah, maybe we should have a break now. What do you think before the next lecture?
Yeah, sure.
If it's
Feel free to ask us.
Although there could be questions, of course.
Yeah,
sorry.
in the break, someone can ask questions, maybe.
Yeah, I will be here anyway, so we can say, let's say 10 minutes. 10 minutes break, but we will be here to reply to your question even.
Yeah.
Well, not me, Elias.
So maybe you will ask questions for us
Yeah.
now.
True.
Is it perhaps possible to have a hands-on opportunity on your agent-based model, like we had with Hans's model, or also with yours, just to play around?
You mean you can play with it on this COVID-19 web tool. If you want to, you can change parameters there. But if you want to like dive more deep, it's not that simple. You'll need to do some coding.
I'm just a little bit afraid of JavaScript, not very much. And my idea was to, well, from what I could follow in your presentations, I could probably gather similar data of my country and to like how well it performs.
Yeah, this was our idea actually for the second week. Maybe someone would try to adapt the model for another country and present it on this web tool as well. I'll see what we can do with agent-based model, if it will be possible to. It will of course be possible to play with parameters and to tune the model this way. I think yes, that will be possible. But changing some like
Model structure,
it would be more complicated. I'm not sure if it would be possible in a week.
Yeah, I think parameterizing is
yeah, that would definitely be possible.
According what you presented, then it's basically I have to just calculate few indices. What was the word regarding restrictions and just input them, see how it turns out.
Yeah, that would be great, I think.
And moreover, as Ilya said before in the first part of our lecture, all presented and developed models are available on our ICT web server, so you can check it as well.
Okay, cool, thanks.
So, Ilyas, I was wondering, you said that the agent-based modeling gave the same results as the ODE-based modeling. So that's nice on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's not nice because you would want to see something additional. And I actually think you did see some additional, like the spread, the inaccuracy, therefore, of the model, of the average model. You can also see because the bandwidth is broader, it seems to me, every now and then. Did you look at that more in detail? So could you tell to the governments which properties cannot be predicted well and which properties can be predicted well? Something like that. That would be a value, an extra value of the agent-based modeling as compared to the ODE-based modeling.
Yeah, sure. There's like this bandwidth is actually changes in time, and the some time period it's smaller, and the other time period it's much larger. So it's also an interesting thing. But our agent-based modeling can produce much more detailed results. For example, age distribution, infected people among 8 different age groups. It was just not like included in the presentation.
But you didn't do that yet, right? It seems.
Yeah, but no, we calculated it and like observed it. No meaningful like conclusions were done yet based on this information.
I mean. Yeah, would be great to try that in a project, maybe even, right? To do for Novosibirsk and then see whether it now makes a difference, old and young people and so on. Yeah. Because with the agent base, and that is maybe just changing parameters. So that maybe is something for Andries where you could change the parameters, and because you already have that in the model, in the agent-based model, right? So it's just changing a parameter: more old people, fewer old people.
Yeah, we have actually distributions. I can see. Yeah. I can show. So if you see my screen. Oh yeah, I think something went wrong. Okay, so here we have in parameters for age distribution in the region and the probability of different severity of symptoms for different age groups. Yeah. And this information is taken into account in agent-based model. And you can change this information in our web server, and then it will be used here. So you can change these parameters for your country and see if it will be different.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about towards the end, what is now a very hot point in European countries, Western European countries, like the English starting Monday with vaccination, and other countries start about 2 months later. Now the general public is asking, when there's vaccination, can you relax the lockdown? And to me, it seemed that I thought the answer would be no, but I think the answer is yes when I look at your simulations. But that's maybe because you had the number of vaccinations per day relatively high. It was 5,000, which may be unrealistic, huh?
Yeah, our suggestion was that when we are currently at the peak or at the rising of the curve, and there are many people infected. So in fact, vaccination doesn't do this that much unless you vaccine a lot of people. So you should really be vaccinating people like 2 months ago. So you muted.
You mean for Novosibirsk and Moscow, yeah. That's correct.
Hans,
we cannot hear you, Hans.
You could also see from your simulation that if you would now relax the lockdown by December 2, then I think mid-January, it's complete herd immunity and you have millions of dead people, right? That is what is from that curve. So that's also because like in the Netherlands, that's the country I know best. There's lots of people say they should just relax the lockdown. And it would be good if the model shows to those people what would happen. Because before vaccination would be in place, you would you could have just let go of the epidemics in March 2020, would have made no difference, right? You lose everything you gained when you now relax the lockdown. Yeah, I think maybe that's the conclusion. I'm not sure I'm asking really, but that would be an interesting topic to maybe also for a project to show whether that is actually true, and then this should be mailed to the governments because it's extremely important information, and to the press.
We actually are like a part of an interdisciplinary group, but today we had a presentation with them with our models. And in past they asked us, for example, for model vaccines, and something else, but we never had feedback from them. So they just sometimes ask us to do something, but never tells us if it's good or what decision was made.
Yeah.
But I think they listen.
Yeah, this is one of the tough problems in governments. It's the same. It seems to be the same everywhere. Maybe a little bit less in the UK, paradoxically, but certainly in many other European countries, and absolutely in the USA, of course. That's clear. Yeah. So we have a problem there, that lack of communication. The government doesn't listen to science. Yeah, partly. Maybe for their reasons, I don't know, but it's a problem.
And we have another problem, which is like, in my opinion, of course, but the data for Novosibirsk region is quite sketchy, I think. If I'll share my screen with you again. So you can see when we model this, we modify social distance, and so we had like this plateau, and then there was a drop, and this drop was like from nothing. Nothing could actually explain this. There are some interventions, of course, but in my opinion, they cannot describe this drop. And then there is this rise, the second wave, and then the rise stopped like in the instant, and then we have another plateau, and this plateau is like more flat, almost ideally flat.
Yeah.
And so we try to model this by adjusting the social distance factor, multiplying by 3 or dividing by 3 to model this. And this was one of the reasons why I tried to move away from social distance and try to model European countries, because I think my data may be more reliable, and we do not need to like do these modifications with social distance, like, multiplied by 3 and see that now we
I think
have
these really flat data are really suspicious.
yeah. And also in
Sorry if I
Moscow,
said it. By the way,
there
there
is
is Patricia that she wants to ask you a question.
Okay.
yeah.
Is in
Let's
the
have
chat.
Patricia.
Yeah.
Tricia, unmute, please.
It's just that for me it's still unclear what kind of data do we need for like fit the parameters. So because yeah, I'm not even sure which kind of parameters were fitted, because at some point you said that you try, so maybe it's like randomly that you try to assign a value to the parameter and see if it fits.
Yes, we use some estimating algorithm which receives experimental data for like registered cases and then try to fit parameters. So this is automatically fitting, which tries to change parameter values in a way that model reproduce experimental data. You can also do this manually, as I showed before, like playing with those parameters, changing the values. And there are a lot of parameters. There are 24 parameters in the model, which describes all processes, all these transitions between different groups. If I'll show the model. Oh, no, it's not it. So if you see our model. So those are groups of people and reactions processes.
So we can see only black screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Maybe it's a different monitor.
Yeah, okay. These are processes, and each of these process or reaction is governed by mass action kinetic. So there is some rate multiplied by the substrate. So when we test people, infected people, we multiply number of infected people by this rate. And so rates for all these processes are to be estimated. Of course, some of them can be estimated like manually from data. For example, we know like death rate for COVID, or we have we know incubation period duration. So we can like manually set some of parameters, but most of them are fitted. So I don't know if I answered your question.
So basically, if I can say, like in comparison to what you saw yesterday, like the species, you can quantify because you have statistical data. So you know how many infected you have for each day, you know how many tested were done each day. So these numbers are discrete number that you take from the statistical data.
Yes.
And one of the websites is, for example, our Word in Data, the Oxford website that I show also in my presentation, but you could take it also from the John Hopkins.
We also use this site.
Yeah. So there are like several places where you can take this data, but then as he explained all the rates, some of them you know, but the majority you have to fit because they are unknown. Did we reply to your question, Patricia?
More or less.
Okay.
So yes.
Which are your doubts?
No, it's just, so I think at the beginning, but I think it was for the other model, you said that you collect the number of infected, the number of dead people, and there was another category. So those are like the three kind of numbers that are essential.
Yeah.
Okay.
Too more data you have, to better you fit your model.
Yeah, you can also have number of people on ICU daily, which also may help to model, and also number of tests.
Yeah, but then if you, for example, because you said that for Italy you could not really fit correctly the model, so if you have the like the kind of the real numbers, why it's not really fitting?
Maybe I can reply to this question. Sorry, Elia. No, I have an hypothesis about it. So in Italy, as you may know, so we had this explosion of cases in north of Italy, and like the situation in terms of economical terms, but also in the infection term during COVID is really different between north and south. And what they fit is an average number. Instead, I'm pretty sure that if they would fit the data just about the Lombardia, which is one of the regions that was most highly hit by COVID-19, the prediction would improve a lot. Because, I think most of the uncertainty in their prediction is given by the fact that in Italy, it's really fragmented, the situation. So there were really regional outbreak.
I would agree with that, definitely. But we do not have this stringency index for Lombardy, unfortunately. We have it only for Italy overall. But
yeah. But for example, right now that we are again in lockdown in Italy, so we have regional stringency. So I don't know if you know, in Italy, every region now has a different color. So red is like total lockdown. We have orange and yellow. So they have different stringency for each region.
Yeah, the same is in France.
Okay.
Only, yeah, of course there are red regions and whatever. Ilya, I want to just ask you a question regarding before what you say regarding these trends, that it was unexpected. So you were guessing that maybe the data are not where.
About the plateau?
You showed previously.
Yeah, okay, I can show it again.
And just a question, curiosity, do you know if there is some hidden variable that could explain this?
This drop?
Yes. Have you investigated that? If it could be some
I didn't investigate it in details. I think it's just manipulations with data. That's my assumption.
But no, I mean, in so many countries we observed the drop in registered counts and recovered counts because it's a summer. It's much better for. It's much worse for virus spread in summer. It also was demonstrated.
If you check to some correlation to some particular variable, just for that.
Well, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Clear the weather you're suggesting, Ilya. Ilya A is suggesting the weather.
Weather is a topic we discussed a bit, but like there are countries in tropics who are affected with coronavirus more badly even than some countries in cold climate. So we are not sure if it's a really factor. But here in Moscow statistics, you can see even more square plateau, even more flat, ideally flat.
Yeah, for me, it's not much about the drop, but about the flatness of this plateau.
But
really suspicious. I really cannot understand how it can be so flat.
Yes, that it became constant, and actually this behavior you see on the trend when it happens that there is some hidden correlation of some variable that is not explained. That just I was thinking whether there could be some other variables as well as the weather that can be explored to see if there is some.
Yes, this is of course a topic to discuss and maybe to add to the model.
An obvious one is a limitation of the number of the test capacity. If that's limited, you get the same thing.
That's right, but test capacity are increasing, and but the number of cases.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we should watch our time, Dr. Astrologer.
Indeed. I was about to say that we should start with the next presentation.
So the next presentation, we're pleased to see that in that case there is an interaction between science and government, and that is done coming from the University of Luxembourg to us. It's Ate Aalto who's giving the presentation, and he is going to talk about COVID-19 modeling efforts in advice to the Luxembourgian government. Ate, thanks very much for giving us this lecture.
Thank you for the invitation. I assume you can see the screen and maybe even the cursor.
I can see the screen, and now I can see the cursor. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a small cursor. Yeah.
Yes, it's small. Okay. Thanks. So I am Ate Aalto. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the Luxembourg Center for Systems Biomedicine, the LCSB, which is an interdisciplinary research institute within the University of Luxembourg. And during normal times, I'm working on modeling gene expression, but now for the last 8 months or so, I've belonged to a modeling group that has been providing simulations and also some other data analysis related to the COVID-19 for the Luxembourgish government to aid in their decision making. And like in many other countries, in Luxembourg, this kind of large COVID-19 task force was formed that is split into 13 different work packages. And this work package 6 is the sort of modeling group that I will be talking about mainly, but I also want to mention a couple of other work packages. Namely, there is the first work package is related to a cross-sectional study on the prevalence in Luxembourg, which was done a couple of times during the spring and early summer. And from this study, we got some quite valuable data, for example, related to the number of total infections versus the discovered cases. Then there is the work package 4, which is kind of, well, maybe not completely unique in Luxembourg, but we have had an extensive large-scale testing program going on in Luxembourg since June. And I think right now, every per capita test numbers are now around 2. So the whole population has been tested twice on average at the moment. And there is, of course, some crosstalk between these work packages. And for example, we did, before this large-scale testing started, we did some simulations sort of predicting the effect of this large-scale testing. And then also after the first phase of the large-scale testing was finished, then we did some retrospective analysis on its impact. Okay, so the work package 6, we have members in this modeling group from different institutions of University of Luxembourg, and also some from elsewhere. A large part of the members are from the LCSB, like me, and also the 2 leaders of this modeling group. And then we also have members from the math department, for example, and also from other interdisciplinary institutes within the university. And during this time of the pandemic, we have used several different approaches for different purposes, starting from simple statistical curve fitting techniques. Then we have had some machine learning approaches, especially for predicting hospital and intensive care occupancy numbers. And then we have had models, both differential equation models with different types of parameter estimation methods, and then agent-based models. And I have been mainly working on an agent-based model in Luxembourg. So I will start from differential equation, explaining about differential equation models, and then sort of build a connection to agent-based models in this presentation. So the very standard tool is, of course, the SIR model, where a population is divided into 3 compartments: susceptible, infected, and removed, or sometimes recovered. And then we have two different sort of reactions or flows from between these compartments. One flow from the susceptible to infected when people get sick, and then another flow from the infected to the removed compartments. And these flows are given by two or three differential equations. So the flow from susceptible to infected, it depends on the product of the susceptible and infected population. And then the flow from infected to removed depends on the amount of infected people. And one very well-known property of this kind of model is that if you sum up the right-hand side of these equations, you get 0, which means that the sum of S, I, and R remains N at all times. So the whole population of size N is divided between these three compartments. Now there are quite a few different extensions of the SIR model, and the best known one probably is the SEIR model, where you basically introduce one more compartment between the susceptible and infected compartments, which is basically people that have contracted the virus but are not yet infectious. Which, yeah, this still results in a couple of new terms in the differential equations, but in some sense there's nothing that special there. Then it's possible to keep expanding the model. So also in the previous talk you saw very similar block diagrams. So here is a diagram of one differential equation model that was developed within our modeling group, where sort of the basic blocks are exactly like in an SCIR model, but then the infected compartment is divided into further groups. So there are people can be either detected or undetected, and then they can be quarantined if they are detected. So after they're quarantined, they cannot infect others. Then severe cases end up in hospital and then further to ICU, and then may also die. Okay, now apologize, there's a little bit, this is the most math heavy slide I have. So kind of the SIR model, as I presented, it's completely deterministic, meaning that if you start from the same initial condition, no matter how many times you simulate it, you always get the exact same behavior, which is of course not completely realistic. Now there is a kind of a standard way of making a stochastic version of the SIR model, which is also in some sense, there's a nice analogy between molecular biology, or actually chemical reactions, and the SIR model, because if you're modeling chemical reactions, you end up with this exact same formulation. So in principle, you can think that when a susceptible person becomes infected, it's kind of a chemical reaction between one susceptible and one infected person to produce a new infected person. So actually this stochastic formulation is exactly the same that you see in reaction equations. So we basically introduced two random terms. So here W1 and W2 are the random terms, and they are independent white noise processes, and the coefficients in front of them are just the square roots of the flows between of the flows corresponding to these two reactions, right? And now, what basically this red term is in this first equation with a plus sign, and in the second equation with a minus sign, and the blue term is here with a plus sign and there with a minus sign. And so again, if you sum up the right hand sides, you get 0, meaning that the whole population is still divided exactly into these three compartments. Now, of course, the differential equation framework already is an approximation, and also this stochastic version is an approximation. I mean, of course, in reality, if you have a population of n people, then in principle, the numbers of people in different compartments, it should be, of course, integer valued, right? But since it's a differential equation, this is never the case. So it should be interpreted as an approximation, and what it is an approximation of is the following setup, which is probably the most simple agent-based model that you can think of. So we have a group of agents, meaning discrete individuals that are either susceptible, infected, or removed. And each of the susceptible persons has a probability of becoming infected during an infinitesimal time step delta t, and this probability is directly proportional to the share of infected people in this population. And each of the infected people has a constant probability of recovering or to be removed during a time step of length of infinitesimal length, right? So if we would simulate this kind of system, now of course, if we at all times we count the numbers of people in the different compartments, we of course get integer valued numbers, and then if we keep adding more and more agents to making it into a larger and larger system, then eventually the simulation results that you get, they are starting to resemble more and more the solution of this stochastic differential equation. Right. Now, this very simple framework is kind of limited. I mean, just like the differential equation model, this very simple agent-based formulation assumes that the population is completely homogeneous, meaning that every single individual has exactly the same properties and is meeting exactly the same amount of people, at least in a statistical sense, than everyone else. And it is also assumed that the population is perfectly mixed. What this means is that well, every morning when you wake up, you say that you meet 20 people today. Now, in this framework, it is assumed that these 20 people are randomly chosen from the whole population every day. This is like a rough interpretation of what perfect mixing would mean. Now, of course, this is not completely or not true at all, because first of all, you meet your family members every day, and on most days when you go to work, you meet the same colleagues every day and so on. So the population in reality is much more clustered than what is assumed by the classical SIR model. Now, an agent-based model in general is not bound to this limitation, but you can basically program different types of behavioral rules for each of the agents. Of course, this is a lot of work, but in principle, that would be possible. Yeah, this is done a small comparison between differential equation and agent-based models. I think we saw something a little bit similar in the previous talk. So now a differential equation model is, well, I would say at least relatively easy and fast to tune. Well, mainly because solving an ODE it doesn't take that much time, so you can even make parameter estimation automatic. Then there are many out-of-the-box tools for solving differential equations, like the COPASI or the BioUML that we just saw. Now, the downsides of a differential equation model is that the heterogeneity that you can put in the model is a little bit limited. now, as was just discussed, it's possible to sort of split the population into different groups representing, for example, people of different ages, or then people with working in different sectors, and so on. But whenever you do a split, then you need to also sort of split in many different directions. So if you want to split the population based on age and economic sector, then you you end up with an exploding number of compartments in the end. Also, it's not that straightforward to implement interventions in a differential equation based model. Now you can do that, but often you end up with parameters that are not really directly tangible in some sense. In an agent-based model, you can, as I mentioned, you can put in as much heterogeneity as you want, which then of course comes with a cost, because whenever you put in more of different things, you always need more and more information on how the different types of people behave. So how does behavior depend on age, for example, and so on. It's possible to model different types of contacts with varying infection risks. So for example, when you go to a supermarket, you might meet 100 people, but the infection risk is quite low, probably. But then if you invite people to your home, you meet fewer people, but with a very high infection risk. So this type of things can be coded in an agent-based model. Also, the interventions can be done in a little bit more realistic way, because you just code how you sort of assume that different things are done in reality. For example, contact tracing is one good example that we have included in the model. So in a differential equation, you don't really have the individuals that you can track, but in an agent-based model, you can actually check who is meeting with whom, and then you can sort of track these contacts in a very realistic way. Now, the number of parameters is of course huge, and you need a lot of information to fit those parameters, but even still, you do end up just plainly guessing quite a lot of different parameters. For example, how often do people invite people into their homes, and if you want to model that sort of things. And so there's still a lot of guessing that you have to do. On the other hand, the parameters are often, they are quite well connected to real life, such as the one I just mentioned, probability of inviting people to your home and this kind of thing. So you can kind of at least find a sort of realistic value quite easily. The models are quite complex. Of course, it's both positive and negative thing. And tuning an agent-based model is time-consuming and quite difficult. Well, time-consuming also because they are computationally often quite heavy, so one simulation does not happen with a push of a button. And also there are the exact set of parameters that reproduces the observations, it's not unique. I mean, you can increase the probability of going to a restaurant and reduce the frequency of going to a supermarket, and you might end up with the exact same numbers. Anyway, with these positives and negatives in mind, I would say that a differential equation model is very good for short-term projections, and also recently we've seen a lot of publications coming out where they do some sort of simple phenomenological studies with differential equation models. For example, introducing some additional term representing I don't know, whatever, and then they look at the effect of this added added compartment in the model, for example. The agent-based models, on the other hand, are ideal for answering this type of what-if questions, such as what if we close schools next week? What if we reduce the capacity of restaurants next week? And this kind of things. With an ODE model, of course, you could do that, but usually you're working with some sort of social interaction parameters. So then the question is, how much do you reduce your parameter if schools are closed, for example? So it's not very easy to say in advance how much parameter should be changed. Whereas in an agent-based model, if we have programmed schools and restaurants and whatnot, then we just switch them on or off, and then we see the effect. Right. Now, if there are, I think it'd be a good time for questions if there are any, because now I will move on to presenting this agent-based model that we developed in Luxembourg. So it's kind of a good time for.
Any question?
Just occurs to me, Atte, that I mean, you could not only make this model for the COVID-19 epidemic, but basically because you talk about people going to schools, to supermarkets and everything else, this model could remain live for a country of Luxembourg also after the epidemic, and you could do all sorts of things. Is that correct or not? Is there so much information in it?
So there, I would say yes and no. I mean, the behavior of the agents, it's maybe not in some sense completely realistic. I mean, we do sort of have statistics on how often people go to restaurants or use public transportation or go to supermarket and so on, which comes from scientific publications. But this is sort of randomized for each day. So there is not the complete realism in this sense. So if you go to supermarket today, then you probably don't go tomorrow. So this kind of structures don't exist in the model. And of course, some people go to restaurants much more often than others. And we have sort of included some of this kind of heterogeneity, but maybe not in a completely realistic sense. But in some sense, yes, it sort of contains a model of how people live their daily lives in some sense.
So this is what Google already, and Bill Gates may already be headed for, or in a sense, in the Big Brother society.
Maybe, yes. I don't know. I mean, now, of course, it's like there's been many countries, people have taken this app tracing, for example, and where the goal is to follow how people behave. Of course, they're saying they're not using the data for anything else, but yeah, I don't know. And anyway, Google is already following you, that's for sure. I mean, they release also this kind of mobility data, which I know that has been used also a lot in the COVID simulations.
They can probably also predict you.
Yeah, much better than we can with the model. Yeah.
When are you going to the restaurant?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, if there's no further questions, then I will then talk about the agent-based model. So I think you've seen already quite a few of this kind of block charts. So here is one more. In our agent-based model, we model the whole population of Luxembourg. So we have around 600,000 agents in the model. And initially, they all start from the susceptible pool. They then become exposed and then infected. And the infected block is split into several paths, where, first of all, patients can be either asymptomatic or symptomatic, and asymptomatic people, they will just then directly, or not directly, but they will eventually recover. So just like in the model that was just presented by Ilya, they cannot end up in hospital or ICU, but they can still infect others. Then symptomatic patients can be either severe or not severe, and severe patients will require hospital treatment and also potentially intensive care. And we also modeled a capacity limit for the intensive care. So if the intensive care unit is full, then the patients can wait for some time, but if they don't get the treatment that they would need, then eventually they will die. Most, or actually maybe all of these splits that you see where it's decided whether patients are severe or not severe, all these probabilities depend on the age of the patient. Symptomatic people are tested, not all of them, but a large part of them, whereas asymptomatic people are not tested by classical testing, but we have also implemented in the model the large-scale testing, which is more randomized, and then also contacts of identified cases can also be tested. So in these cases, also asymptomatic people might end up being tested positive. But in some sense, the sort of disease pipeline is perhaps less interesting, and more interesting part of the model is how the agents interact to infect each other. So basically you could think that we have defined a huge social network between all of the agents, and basically it's possible for an infected person to infect someone who they are connected with in the social network. And well, few words on the development. So we basically started this model from scratch, but we had a kind of a running version already quite early in late March, but we have been sort of developing this model the whole time while we've been also doing simulations for the government. So I think that was quite well said by Rudi Balling, the head of LCSB, and also the modeling group, that we have been sailing and building the boat at the same time, which you can imagine has not always been that easy. And in particular, we have had to sort of release different versions. We cannot just develop things all the time, because if we do simulations today, then tomorrow simulations that we do tomorrow should be comparable to the ones before. So then we always have to do larger updates in batches. So very early on in March and April, we worked with our first version of the model, where we basically had one fixed social network between the agents. And there was basically just some age dependency on the statistics of the contacts, but that's it. And then on top of this, we built a very crude model for workplaces and schools. So with that model, we were able to simulate things like, okay, we simulated the lockdown, and then we simulated things like what happens if 50,000 people return to office, for example. Then in our second version of the model in April and May, we introduced workplaces in different economic sectors with varying infection risks in these sectors. So for example, healthcare has a higher risk than some office work where you don't really meet anyone. The infection risks we got from some study which was not related to COVID, but some other infectious disease. We also introduced cross-border workers as sort of simplified agents, so we don't simulate their daily routine, but they are still in their workplaces and can infect their colleagues. And this is kind of an important part in Luxembourg, because we have actually around 1/2 of the workforce in Luxembourg is not living in Luxembourg, but they commute from the 3 neighboring countries. So it's quite a significant number of people. We also implemented the contact tracing intervention, and then also customer interaction. So customer interaction includes, I think, 8 different parts. So it's at least restaurants, supermarkets, then some services like hairdressers and beauty salons, and healthcare, and some others. So basically the customers can infect the staff of a facility, and then customers can also infect other customers that they meet in these facilities. Then in June, we introduced a third bigger version of our model, where the big new thing was, well, households, but in particular that the data regarding households, school classes, and workplaces, it is not just made up data, but it comes from the Luxembourgish social security system, meaning that in principle, every agent in the model has a real life counterpart, but of course it's completely anonymized, so we cannot really track back who is who. But this is kind of an important aspect in the model. Yeah, in the third version, we also model some private gatherings, so people inviting others to their homes and so on. And large-scale testing, as I mentioned, we implemented that with some different strategies. So, for example, these high-risk work sectors, people working there, they are tested more often than low-risk sectors. And also there's been some regional targeting in the large-scale testing. And finally, mainly thanks to this social security data, now in our model we have kind of location specificity. So Luxembourg is divided into 13 cantons, and so now we in principle can look at the different how the epidemics is evolving in the different cantons, and it also affects on people's behavior. So when you go to a restaurant, you probably go into one in your own canton and so on. So you use the services that are local. Okay, I've kind of touched on this already a little bit. So the social network in the current model, you can think that it's divided into 4 different layers. One would be the household contacts, so your family, and there the infection risk is relatively high, and also these contacts are always active. Then the second layer is the work and school related contacts, where we have this sector dependent infection risks, and then these are on or off, these contacts, depending on whether the work sector is active or not. So during lockdown, many sectors were closed, and then little by little they were reopened. Third layer is related to these private gatherings, house guests, larger events like weddings, and then this customer interaction module. And these connections are then randomized for each time step in the model. And then we have other contacts, which basically accounts for everything that we don't model explicitly. So for example, sports and other hobbies we have not explicitly modeled, so those would be lumped into the other contacts. We can try to visualize a little bit the contact structure. So here are the sort of 3 major contact sources, so households, workplaces, and schools. And I'm showing here the average number of contacts between people from different age groups. So in households, you have a lot of things here on the diagonal, which pretty much represents that in your household, you interact a lot with people of the same age as you. And then there is also this sort of generation gap. So these off diagonals would represent people living with their children. So you can see that there are a lot of contacts between 35 to 39-year-olds and less than 5-year-old people, for example. And then it sort of fades away after 20, 25 years when the children usually move away. The workplace contacts, they are not exactly uniformly, but you can still quite nicely see that they are located in this square covering ages from 20 to 65. And then school contacts are, of course, completely concentrated on the diagonal because school kids are interacting with people who are exactly of their age, and it also stops here at the age of 19. Originally, in our model version 1, we actually our data consisted of this kind of matrix that showed us the age dependency of the contact structure, and then we from there constructed the social network. But now when we have the social security data, we can then sort of reconstruct this kind of matrices from the data that we have. Okay, then a few words of what we then did with the model. So basically, we were not directly communicating with the government, but the government, they set up this kind of an interministerial advisory group that had members from a couple of different ministries and also this High Commission of National Protection. And they were then always in contact with us when they needed some simulations. So usually, I think the government knew that, okay, this week we are going to decide what to do with restaurants, and then this advisory group then requested simulations related to that, and then we did those simulations, and often there was a lot of back and forth communication involved. And in the end, when this advisory group was happy, they then made some kind of a report to the government for their decision making. And I think in particular 4 ministries of Health, Ministry of State, Education and Economy have been the ones that were interested in the simulations. We have done quite a few simulations over time. Couple of sort of extreme scenarios. So what happens if we continue a strict lockdown until the end of the epidemics? Or what if we do a sort of full exit, basically open everything? So these kind of give us an idea of the 2 extremes. Early on, we did a lot of, especially for what comes to the government, we were mainly working with them during the deconfinement phase. So in April, May, June, when they were doing decisions on what economic sectors can be opened and so on, and what kind of social interaction can be allowed. So we did a lot of simulations on opening retail and this kind of rendezvous services like the hairdressers and so on. So them opening on different dates. Then we did quite a lot of this sort of house guest scenarios. So basically simulating what happens if 100,000 people invite 6 guests from 2 different households, or what if it's 10 people from 4 different households, and a lot of these kind of things. I think that the government really wanted to know what to communicate to the public. We've simulated the effect of contact tracing with varying capacity. So if the capacity of contact tracing is saturating, then you can see a bad explosion. Then one thing that was done in Luxembourg was that during the spring, all school classes were split in 2, so that only one half at a time was actually getting contact teaching. So only one half at a time was in a classroom. And I think this was done in a weekly basis. So 1 week, one half was in school, and I think the other half was following online, and the next week it was the other way around. So then we also simulated that what's the effect of this if this would be continued for the new school year that started in September. We also simulated the effect of larger gatherings like weddings. And then, as I mentioned before, we simulated the effect of the large scale testing with different targeting strategies. We also simulated the app tracing, but I think those simulations were not really requested by the government, but we just did it. But I think in the end, the government decided not to go with any app tracing in Luxembourg. So the results that we do, they typically look like this. So here is one simulation from early July. So like you can see, now here it's overlaid with the new data, and you can see it doesn't quite match. I mean, of course, it's not so easy to predict future far ahead, but in short term, it's still kind of decent fit. So we always simulate 40 randomized replicates, and then based on where we do sort of a small variation in this kind of master infectiousness parameter. And even though we only change this parameter by a very few percent, the uncertainty or the variability in the model outcome is quite huge. So here the blue line shows the mean of the 40 replicates, and the shaded area shows the 90% envelope where the simulation results were. And we can compute the total cases and then the detected cases, and then currently active cases, daily new cases, and then we can do these predictions on the intensive care occupancy and then the number of deaths. That these are sort of the outputs that we usually take from the simulations. And okay, I wrote here that this is one simulation on the effect of large-scale testing, but of course, like I mentioned, in some sense, the predicting the future is not the purpose, but the main purpose is to being able to compare different interventions and different kind of what-if scenarios. So here is one more recent simulation that was done in mid-October, actually just a few days before this sort of bigger explosion started in Luxembourg. So until then, we had seen case numbers of around 200 per day, but now then after that, they've been even up to around 800. And here are two scenarios where the red is sort of a baseline, which is trying to kind of where we try to guess what might be happening. And then the blue one is then a scenario which is the baseline, but with some modifications done to it. And now this modification here is that there is a 50% reduction on private gatherings and also restaurant visits, and then also increased capacity in large-scale testing. And you can see that what's the effect of this intervention on the predicted numbers. Interestingly, you can here see that actually first the blue line in the daily new cases starts going higher than the red line, which is due to the increased capacity in the large-scale testing. So you start finding cases that you would otherwise miss, and then you can also do contact tracing on those found cases to find sort of even larger infection chains. Right. Okay, so the agent-based model, of course, we can take from an agent-based model, we can take a much more detailed results out. So here are a couple of examples. So here is on the first row, there are the age distributions of the infections, or I think it's the detected cases, where the red line is the true distribution and the blue bars are showing the simulation results. And in particular, you can see that there is quite a big difference in the true distribution, which has been observed pretty much everywhere, that during the first wave, the elderly population was quite a lot overrepresented in the case numbers, whereas younger people were underrepresented. which is probably also due to testing strategies that early on it was only people with more severe symptoms that got tested. And of course, probably during the second wave, I think the elderly population was probably taking the restrictions more seriously than the younger population, which also has an effect. But the difference is actually so extreme that it's very hard to fit. Even though we have changes in the testing strategy and we have changes in behavior implemented, but still it's very difficult to fit this distribution. We can also look at regional level, and here is the plots on the lower row are from the second wave. So here is just plotted the prevalence in the 13 cantons. And of course, there also, it doesn't sort of naturally create this behavior, but during the second wave, we had one canton in the south that was hit particularly badly, and this is shown here on with the purple line. And we wanted to reproduce this behavior so that we could then also simulate the effect of the regional targeting of the large-scale testing. On the last plot, there is the number of cases that were found by large-scale testing. So here the red one is again the true data, and then the blue curve is the mean of our simulations of the stochastic replicates, and then there is again the shaded area showing the 90% envelope. So this is also something that we matched when we were doing the retrospective analysis on the impact of large-scale testing. So we were, well, quite happy that the number of tests and the number of cases found, they both match the real numbers, which means that probably also the testing model is at least accurate enough to reproduce observations. Okay. Yeah, so like I mentioned, we always do several randomized replicates for each scenario. And sometimes it's also a good idea to look at what's happening in the individual replicates. And here is one very nice example showing the number of currently active cases in one scenario with 20 stochastic replicates, where we clearly see that there are two replicates where the contact tracing is saturating. So the contact tracing, they at some point had a capacity of around 100 new cases per day that they were able to then trace. So if this would be exceeded, then they basically lose control of the infection chains, and then you see a bigger explosion. Whereas in the other cases, they always remain below the capacity of contact tracing. Okay, I think I will skip this one. Our code is, it's done in MATLAB. Basically, no particular reason for that, except that we are most familiar with that one, and so we just went with that. And it's a completely custom written code, where on the positive side, we have sort of perfect freedom to introduce new modules and new stuff in the model. Of course, if you have this kind of a visual representation like the Copassi, you can probably do this as well, but at some point you probably have to go to the code level anyway to introduce more complex structures. The downside, of course, is that it's not very user-friendly. So for us, it's okay. We started from scratch, so we know the code quite well. But if we take new people in the team, there's of course quite a big learning curve to get in the model. The way the code is constructed is that we are mainly simulating what the infectious people are doing at each time, and therefore the simulation time depends a lot on the scenario. So if there is a scenario where you have not that many infections, then this might take only a couple of minutes. Then if we have a scenario where the majority of people will be infected, then this simulation takes around 15 minutes. And we are running them on a computer that can handle the 40 randomized replicates in parallel. So this is then the total time that you have to wait to get results. And over the 8 months period, we have created around 400 different scenarios. Can also talk a bit about the code structure itself. So we have a time step of half a day, which basically means that we're not modeling the agents running around in some kind of virtual Luxembourg, but mainly for each time step, we just decide that what the different people are doing on this time step. And then we look at the contacts on that time step. And the way the code works is that the first task during a time step is that it checks what is the current policy. So which people are working, which sectors are open, that is, and all these kind of things. Then it checks what the new infections, sort of normal infections, then infections from cross-border workers, and then mass events, and then it simulates the large-scale testing, contact tracing, and then updates the disease status of infected people. Basically, there is one file that does this, and all the blue boxes are sort of separate functions that are called by the main file. And when we create a new scenario, it basically means creating a new policy function where the current policy is obtained. And that's the only file that we need to touch when we do new simulations, unless we need to implement some new structure in the code itself. Yeah, I don't know if there is, I mean, of course we are already over time, but.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, I made a little mistake in the schedule. I just realized. And now I realize when you start to talk that I made a mistake. So we have time. So I don't know if there is any, if you want to show a bit more, or if people have questions. Actually, there was there are like a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, okay.
So Nigun, she's asking, I think, please correct me if she asked if the code is available, if the model is published. I don't think it's published, but
no, not yet. But we are planning to do this, and probably even quite soon. So we will make it public.
So if I understood correctly, Nigun, if we can speak out, you want to know if you can use this code now, but no, we didn't plan to use his code for next week. But yeah, maybe later on when you will publish it, you will be able to use it.
Yeah, can I say something?
Yeah, sure, please.
Yeah, so thank you very much for a very nice and very interesting presentation. Really. So my question is related to the publication that in the both aspect, whether that your model already published somewhere, like all the parameter and also how you build up the model, and on the other level that the code. Of course, that the code should be something later, but basically, theoretically, have you published this model so far?
Yes. Not yet. So there is actually now a publication that has been recently submitted related to the large-scale testing strategy in Luxembourg, where this model was used in the retrospective impact analysis. So now, because this publication is now going out, I think we are making the code public due to this paper, even though the modeling there is not really in the main role. But we are planning to make it public, although this data that we obtain from the social security system, even though there is no, in some sense, privacy concerns, but due to some data sharing agreement, we cannot publish that. So basically what you would miss is the households and the regional regional specificity in the model. But other than that, we will make it public sometime soon.
Okay, very nice. Looking forward, because I already read the articles that you published about the economic impact already, and I find it's very interesting as well. So I'm looking forward to see the new publication when it comes soon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Also,
Yeah,
Peter has a question. Maybe you want to ask it. Yeah, actually was asking why you didn't use the existing agent-based environment like NetLogo, but I think you already replied to this question because you are more familiar with MATLAB. So
yeah, that I'd say that's maybe one reason, and then yeah, I don't know. In some sense, we want to have sort of full freedom of what goes inside the model. We can also make it kind of efficient since we're only simulating what the contagious people are doing, and these kind of small reasons. So in some sense, we just started more for sort of our own interest to write a little bit something, and then we developed it a little bit more, and then this kind of doing simulations to the government then came kind of as a, well, not really by accident, but we then, when this modeling group was formed, we sort of, everyone who had started to do something, we just kind of looked what we have, and then yeah, then it sort of started from so small and grew bigger and bigger all the time that that's sort of why we went with a custom built code to begin with, that it just started from something simple.
also Patricia has a question. Sorry. Maybe you want to speak out, or you want me to read?
Yeah, it's the same. So I'm wondering, because you say that like you're doing a lot of simulations, and then you go like back and forth with the health authorities from Luxembourg. I just want to have like an idea of how much they rely on these simulations. Would you say like 50%, less, more?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at one point they were really quite keen on having everything simulated. Maybe in some sense it was probably also just politicians trying to cover their backs, sort of showing that, okay, at least it's been simulated and this is what came out of it. But I think especially for what comes to opening dates of restaurants and restrictions on restaurants, they really did listen to us. And at one point we also made a kind of a sort of a price list showing that we can afford 2 new contacts per person per day more. And then we showed that, okay, restaurants will cost you 1.5, and then I think they really sort of listened to us and sort of took their pick from sort of the options that we presented. But of course, they never say exactly out loud that whether they listen to us or not. So I don't know. I think at some point they were really listening to us. But yeah.
And for the large scale testing, so you said that you were simulating different strategies. So you mean like in terms of scheduling?
Yes, exactly. So in terms of scheduling and also in terms of targeting. So there was like these high risk sectors tested more often. And also in this one badly hit region, they also increased the large scale testing capacity. And so this kind of targeting effects. And then also we did test different strategies. I mean, the original idea in the large scale testing was to divide people into groups. So for example, groups of 5 or 6 people from usually, or they wanted to do it from based on people who usually work together. And then they wanted to test 1 person per week from this kind of cells. So we also simulated this sort of effect, but there actually we didn't see that big effect. So it was mainly the number of tests that mattered, a number of tests per sort of risk category. I mean, that definitely seemed to be a good idea, to test more the high risk sectors. Yeah.
And Ali, sorry, I think you will just reply to question. You don't have time to show the code. But
no,
Ali is asking if the agent-based modeling can include also location information. But maybe Ali, you can ask better. I don't know if Ali?
Yes, I'm here. My main point is that since at some level there is some information about different susceptibility to different nationals or different ethnic groups or broad ethnic groups, and already Luxembourg has city level nationality percentage, which is public access. So my main question, if this type of information can be included?
In principle, yes, but then what do you want to do with this information? Like we could put in like different infectivity levels or different social activity levels for different types of people, but we haven't done this. So we haven't done sort of further categorization of the individuals.
It is mainly my main idea would integrate different susceptibility level, for example. If we can include any location information in the model.
Well, in terms of location, I mean, I don't know what exactly you mean by location. I mean, we do have sort of the regional split.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean by regional split, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we did the regional split based on cantons. So 13 cantons. We could, I mean, in the data, we also have information on the municipality level or the commune level where people live. But unfortunately, on the side of the workplaces, we didn't have this information. So then related to this kind of customer interaction part, we had to keep it on the canton level.
Okay, thank you.
Are there more questions?
I think Ilya Akberdin showed his hand.
Okay, thank you, Hans. I actually have two questions. The first one I would say the philosophical question, but maybe I thought it would be quite easily for you to answer based on your experience. So my first question was arising starting from your slide where you demonstrated the pros and cons of OD or deterministic modeling and agent-based modeling. And up to the slide where you show the government demands and requests from government and feedback from your modeling group. So how do you think, is it better to use the already developed and recommended approach like zero modeling to get the quick answer on different government demands or requests for pandemic outcomes, or tried or spend a lot of time to develop agent-based model to fit it to the parameters because it's actually required much more statistical data and distribution data. So what's your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think the tools have to be chosen based on the questions that you want to answer. So I think then if the government wants to know what's the effect of opening restaurants, for example, or opening the construction sector, which were the first or the early simulations that we did, then in some sense, I think these blocks should be included in the model. So if they are asking more detailed questions, then we need a more detailed model to answer it, I would say. And I think that's sort of where the demand has come from. So many of the structures that we have built in the model are as a result of direct questions to us that if we can model certain things. Okay. Yeah, of course. I mean, on the other hand, yeah, it's true that if you have a more simple model, it's easier to then also compare countries and sort of tune it tune it better and to get more information from, then you can probably actually find some sort of true parameters in some sense, which you can never really achieve with an agent-based model. So yeah, for sure there are many trade-offs there.
I think it ties in with parameters. So, I mean, if you say reducing the effect of going to fewer to restaurants, and now that gives a certain effect, but you could also close the supermarkets 50% of the time. I don't think you know these effects. You could fit them, but then there's redundancy in the possibilities. So that still is a big problem unless we get social scientists and people interviewing people. We get much more data on that. That would be quite useful. Or do you think you have enough data there?
So I don't know if we have enough data exactly, but I think at least we have sort of a good understanding of the orders of magnitude.
Okay.
And then you can hope that you get at least that one correct. So what's the order of magnitude of the effect of doing certain things? So I think that's sort of the more important thing than getting it exactly correctly in some sense.
But then you could ask whether if it's only an order of magnitude, agent-based modeling would be more accurate than ODE-based modeling.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in an ODE model, if you want to do this kind of prediction, you need to decide how much do I change my beta parameter, for example. So I'd say that an agent-based model is just sort of answering this question. So it tells us exactly how much we need to change certain parameters, because these different structures are built in, and we take the data from some sources, usually publications, and then we can just sort of switch modules on and off, like these restaurants and different facilities.
But Ilya had a second question as well. Sorry that I interrupted.
Yeah, my second question is more targeted. So it turned out that the government and also society were actually not ready to the pandemic and to comply with government anti-epidemic action, etc. So in this case, how long will it take to refit your model for another pandemic if it happened for Luxembourg, for instance?
I think for Luxembourg it would be quite fast, I think, because the basic structure is not really changed. Then of course the main things that change are the infectivity parameters, and then of course other disease related parameters, like how people go to hospitals and so on. But that's, in some sense, that's a separate part of the model. Like we could completely detach the hospital ICU part, so and just look at the epidemic spread. So I think that would be kind of easy. Then for going to different countries, it's sort of possible, but in some sense, all the demographic data, all that is kind of built into the social network that comes from the social security data. That's of course we can kind of approximate different countries, but not so directly.
But you did not do what you just said in the inverse situation, in the inverse strategy. Have you looked at the influenza epidemic of 2018, for instance, and then see whether you can now post-dict what happened there? Because that is an extrapolation. You cannot only predict the future, but you can predict your predictions. You can test your predictions in the past, it seems to me.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a good point, and I think now it's in some sense also possible with the COVID, like we already did with the large scale testing. That's a good example, because there we actually did also the retrospective analysis related to a publication. And I think in some sense, of course, the numbers change from when we did the prediction to the retrospective analysis, but the size of the effect still remained the same. So I think that's kind of good validation that it's useful to model.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I can then also, if I don't have time to go to the to the code. That's okay. I mean, anyway, the code is just a bunch of code, so there's not much to see there in some sense. But maybe the discussion part I can still show that, like I said, the model is not a crystal ball, so it doesn't actually, in some sense, it doesn't predict the future, but it does what we tell it to do. So if we want to predict what's the effect of holidays, for example, then it doesn't do that automatically, but we have to be the ones that guess that how much is what happens on the different areas of society during the holidays. And okay, that was already discussed, that the more complex model, it allows for more detailed simulations, but then also requires more work in finding the right parameters, and also finally you end up guessing some of the parameters. And then maybe there's some disagreement on this, but I would say that long-term predictions, they are almost impossible, and that where the sort of value of this kind of modeling work is that we can really compare different scenarios. So we can show what is possible, and then we can show what is the effect of a certain intervention on these possible scenarios. Then some challenges that we've faced. So first one is kind of related to the modeling, that it's really that when we observe something, we observe how many new cases we had today, for example, then there are so many things that can have an effect on this. Like, what is the testing strategy currently in place? And also, even if the government doesn't do any political decision, then of course the general public can still react if the situation gets worse, for example. So people probably will limit their social activity on their own. And that has an effect, and then you might be thinking that, oh great, we are reaching herd immunity, but it's just the public reacting to the bad situation. Then some more practical challenges have been ensuring coherent data streams. So there's data coming in from hospitals and many different other institutions. So there's, like everywhere, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the data and so on, and then unwillingness to share sometimes due to data protection issues. And communication to the public is, it's difficult. I mean, the government, of course, they also have a pressure to make things public. So that's why most of the documents that are provided to the government, they also become public. And then some reporter finds that there is a scenario with 1,000 people dying, and then they make big headlines of that. And they're saying that now researchers are showing that this is going to happen, and that's not really the message that we want to. So these kind of possible scenarios, they are not so easy to communicate. And then sometimes also we had faced some unrealistic expectations also, like we are not really modeling the individual viral particles floating around, so we cannot really say what's the effect of wearing masks. But that's kind of input that we should have as an input to our model, that how much does it reduce the risk of infection. And also other effects like the keeping 2-meter distance and that kind of things. Like we cannot model on that accuracy. But that's it. And now if there's more questions, I'm happy to continue.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Ate. Let's give a hand, an electronic hand this time.
Yeah, we can put this.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's more sophisticated.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I even do fireworks. Yes.
So I have a small question.
Okay.
If I may. So I'm interested in terms of data on testing and contact testing. So I'm curious what level of data was used. I mean, statistical data from government was used in your model. So just the number of tests, number of contact tests, or like daily people who were contact tested.
So the based on the large-scale testing, when we did the predictions, we did not yet have the data. We only had plans, or actually then we did several different scenarios that what if the capacity is 10,000 tests per day, 20,000 and so on. And then when we did retrospectively this, then we did get the amount of performed tests and also the tests divided to different economic sectors. So this high-risk tests and so on. And then, of course, the identified cases from large-scale testing. From contact tracing, we have also had numbers of performed tests, so due to tested contacts, and also the number of found positives. But we have, that data we use to in the retrospective analysis.
Okay, thank you.
It's still a little bit unclear to me in this perspective, because the agent-based modeling, you do then, you know about every individual. So then you know about, so actually the person that individual meets, the person who got infected, you know all the people that this person has met as agents, and then you can also simulate their contact tracing, right? This is how it works.
Yes, exactly.
Really modeling is intensive. Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of intensive, but again, we only model the contagious people in some sense, or we concentrate on them.
That helps.
So that helps a lot. But yeah, there also in the contact tracing, we can then have different efficiency on like if you're infected, then probably most of your colleagues are found or are traced, but then people from supermarkets, they are probably not. So we can there also have different efficiencies on the contact tracing.
But you know, at some point there are many supermarkets. So if today I decide to go to a different supermarket, then that kind of thing is also modeled. So some of these people don't go to their usual supermarket, but they go to a different place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that part is actually sort of randomized completely. So you just go to one supermarket in your, probably in your canton. So that's also true that there is even more of this sort of clustering in reality than what we have in the model, that people tend to go to the same supermarket, to the same restaurant, same everywhere. So this is definitely true.
Ilya, does that clarify?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. To me, that was useful also, yeah.
So I think we are running out of time again. So Hans, I don't know how much time do you need?
I need 10 minutes or 15 minutes, 15 say, 1-5.
Yeah, less is better.
You don't know what I was going to talk about. You may actually like it.
Imagine, I don't have control on what you are saying today.
Yes. Well, maybe you do. Are we going to have a break, or am I going to?
I think it's better that we just finish and we close, because otherwise we will really run out of time again. And I think it's just not right for these people that they live.
But I think you can have a bio break, because I need to set it up, and that will take me 3 minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
Yes, it is. In fact, 2 minutes would be enough, but I can't do a bio break in 2 minutes.
I don't know.
Okay, you decide, you say.
I don't know if you can see it, but there is a moon behind me, so you know that it's night.
Yes. Very subtle.
It will be changed in the morning.
It's unbelievable. We were actually on time, and then we had more time because I made a mistake in the schedule, and we ran out of time. I'm sorry, really. Maybe I'm not a good chair. I should stop people when they are talking.
Yeah, but you know, you should realize that it is pretty hard to share screens, at least for me. So are you now, okay, you're not seeing this. Am I at the right screen? One.
You're not sharing at all.
No, I'm not sharing, and I'm not even looking at the wrong screen. So maybe let me, no, that's not, okay. See if I can, because I don't see the screen I'm sharing. Okay. Why is this? Okay, this is it. Anyway, people are taking a break, so I can just now concentrate on this to try to share my screen.
But usually when you share, it shows you which.
Yeah, I know, but the screen I want to share is not visible.
Ah, okay.
On what I have, and that is my slight problem at the moment. Maybe if I don't switch it, then it becomes visible. But now you see the wrong screen shared.
No, I see the correct one. Concluding remarks, there is some party over there.
Yeah, but that is the one where you make changes, right? This is not the full screen.
No, it's not full screen.
Okay, so I want the full screen. That is the problem.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. Okay, now I see it. Yeah. So do you now see my full screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
So anytime we're ready, we can then start. But now people are doing their bio break, maybe. And Stefania is muted. Oh, okay.
Right.
Maybe two people are here, and I think.
So if you put your thumb up, means you are ready to listen, Hans.
And Sergey Sachenko, he is having his coffee, but he's having his coffee already the entire afternoon. So that is not. That's just a picture. Okay. You're seeing my screen. So this is just my concluding remarks and a picture of the party we're going through at the moment. It's a virtual party, however, so you'll be a bit disappointed. We were crowning Corona, so that is what we're doing today. And I'm really very, very grateful to the speakers of today, to Ilias. And I think by now we can figure out a bit who is Ilya A and who is Ilya B. And then, of course, also Ate, who was very nice in his presentation. And I think at least I learned a lot. And I'm sure that the other people also learned a lot. Now, I already started in the beginning saying that the world is seeing many crises. And one of the things that I witness in this Corona pandemic is that there is a surge in modeling, which is trying to use science to model reality. And I think that might be done for many of these other problems in the world, where we should be more active to try to get more rational policies. You know that the Green Revolution, which was looked at very skeptically, say 30 years ago or 20 years ago, has actually delivered. So lots more people on this planet have food every day than I thought 30 years ago from extrapolation. So it has worked, but it is limited. And that is mainly because rationality around the Green Revolution, it has not penetrated into policy making. And that has been slow. There has been some progress, WHO, United Nations. But then you see now that society has problems with what I call Trumpism or populism, where facts are denounced as fake news. And therefore, policies are no longer based on rationality in many countries. So it's our task to get more of this rationality. And I think that's what I enjoyed in the models that I saw today. They are immediately relevant for society. And it is the best rationality I think we have, with all the limitations of guessing or finding the parameters, guessing the parameters. That's the best we can do as mankind, and it's the most rational we can be. Okay, so that is what the course has been showing, outside of, in addition to the effect that we can deal with in modeling sense a bit with the Corona epidemic. So you thought that at the beginning that this course would only be based on the work of Alexei Kolotkin and his model, But you see that there are other models, and there are many, many, many other models. But we have seen at least 4 other models now being presented. So when you do this, when you are active, and you saw that with the presentation that was used by the Luxembourg government in the positive sense, I think that government did use the science in a positive sense, but you've been aware of other countries that haven't, and you've even been aware of scientists in other countries, and quite famous scientists, the director of the NIH, for instance, Fauci, and Birx, she is in the medical sector in the US, who really did a bad job, in the sense they were present when Trump claimed that one should eat or drink bleach, and they did not stand up and say that he was completely wrong, right? So we have this responsibility. Okay, now why did one use systems biology for corona? I think you saw this illustrated because many of the people that presented models in the course came from systems biology. Also came from systems biology in the sense, at least this was about cell biology, transcription modeling. That's what I understood. That's the area where he came from. So that is where we came from. And why is that so useful? Well, because it's also a complex system, and corona and epidemics is also a complex system. Multiple components, nonlinear relationships, it's biological, and we're concerned with mechanisms and cures. And much of the epidemiological history has been less in terms of detailed mechanisms. And of course, coming from molecular biology and molecular cell biology, we are always thinking about detailed mechanisms. So that is why, and this is an example of something that we did not do in the course. This is how the virus penetrates cells. This is the virus, this penetrates cells. It's actually quite an interesting process because it binds to a receptor, and that is the ACE2 receptor, one of 2 receptors. And we seem to have an unknown immune system against this, a defense system. This is ADAM17, which splits this receptor, and then the receptor binding part, the part that binds to the virus, then binds to the virus, and the virus can no longer bind to the receptor. So that's how complex it gets. And this type of thing is also modeled, of course, for the coronavirus epidemic. And we have not been dealing with this. So it's not only that there are different models for the epidemiology, there are also different models for different areas that are very, very important, of course, for COVID. And one case that I have some experience with, that is the cytokine storm that is caused, that's also in this picture here. That means basically you get an inflammation induced by the virus entering your body. That is usually in the lung, but probably in the intestine as well, and now it seems even in the brain. And this causes enormous damage to people. So there is the post-COVID long haulers, and that is really a horrible phenomenon that we may or may not witness in the future, that about 50 to 80% of COVID patients may develop. And that is like chronic fatigue syndrome is there. So there may be a lot around the corner. Now, I also uploaded a paper that may be relevant for this cytokine storm. So that's the other type of modeling. And that is actually what you see here. You see that the TNF, one of the cytokines, that if you give more antigen, the system may jump from low inflammation, low TNF, tumor necrosis factor, to high TNF, and then it's stuck in the high inflammation state. And this may be actually a model for the lungs if we have been infected with corona, with this virus. Now, today's news was, of course, great. It was great because the vaccine has been improved. And indeed, by the island, by England, by the UK. So they were first, even though Pfizer is an American company. The idea of the vaccine came from Germany, but it was the Brits, as usual, that are faster than everybody else when it gets to using something. So they will start immunizing the next week, they say. The US may do the same. Of course, I'm saying things in the wrong sense because Russia has already started immunizing, correct? And China has as well. So this is about the other half of the world, the more ignorant part of the world. There the UK is leading now. So that was good news. Now, the modeling methodologies that you've seen is indeed ordinary differential equations. We haven't really in black seen that precisely. I mean, that is what you would do yourself with Python or R or MATLAB or Mathematica. Command line stuff, you could compile it. That's even more classical of doing this. We're using Fortran or C. But what we've seen is what I call balance plus rate equations. You may remember that. We say that every node in a network has a balance between influx and efflux. And for every influx and efflux reaction, you need a rate equation. And that is what you were seeing. You could do yourself with Copasi. You can also do it yourself with BioUML. You can also do it using pre-existing models with JWS Online or also BioUML, the web tool. That you can do. And there's stochastic modeling, but there is a very interesting way of doing that. This has been really become possible in recent years, because 10 years ago you could do agent-based modeling, but the computer capabilities were not enough to do this realistically for these type of problems. But now I see that you can actually do this. So those were the agent-based models in Novosibirsk and in Luxembourg. Okay, so it's good that we see this, and here you can realize that here there's little programming and mathematical knowledge not necessary. So you see this heterogeneity in various aspects of the epidemic, but also in the modelers. So you don't have to be afraid. You can actually be a modeler of COVID-19 without knowing mathematics or without knowing programming, because you could use BioUML web tool or you could use JWS Online, right? So that is now a major advantage that this can be done, especially because the hardcore modelers like Ate and like the Ilias, they then are responsible for these tools, and they make sure that this is done well, this type of thing. So we can't wait until there's an agent-based model type on JWS Online or BioUML. So you make a web tool of this. Although I can see this is quite difficult, but one thing is to be motivated maybe, that it would be quite nice if a web tool could be developed for agent-based modeling of COVID-19. And actually, I don't think that's really impossible, but it would be nice. So what remains to be done? Always important. One is calibrate the model on the data of 217 countries. And that has the advantage, and I see very little of this. So Ate did not seem to do this. He did not calibrate his model on France or Germany or Belgium. That's not a criticism because he was too busy anyway. But it seems like an option. Now, the Ilias calibrated their model on 3 countries outside Russia and on Moscow. So that was already getting there. But, you know, more could be done. And in a way, I have this idea that if you really go to 217 countries, all these models would become a lot better. And then I just realized you can also model this on other epidemics, like influenza and the common cold, maybe, and maybe that can further improve these models. It was inspiring to see that the agent-based model, many of the aspects in the model, they would be the same for other diseases and maybe also for other things, like political ideas spreading, because that also depends on context and heterogeneity of the population, right? So that is inspiring. So what can also be done? We can look at economics, maybe, in a project. We can compare with other models. We can look at policy makings. You could actually put in a feedback loop to politicians of your model. You could say, well, we expect politicians to react in a certain way to certain parameters that you see. And then maybe the model develops automatically and maybe you get this horizontal line. Because this is, or if you do this for the general public, because I suspect we see the same sort of thing in the Netherlands at this very moment. I suspect because the public reads the data every night at the news channel, they adjust their behavior to what they're seeing. And that might cause this homeostatic system, which basically means you have a horizontal line. So we can look at the effects of vaccine availability, etc., etc. So there's lots of things that remain to be done, and that is for people interested in doing projects next week. Now for next week, I think we have the resources, as always limited. Copasi, we have JWS Online, we have BioUML, mainly the web service, but also actually some programming facility, because the ILIAs were kind enough to actually specify this. So you can work with the COVID-19 web tool of BioUML, but you could also, and that's described here, actually do a bit more intensive modeling there. And they are willing to help. And of course, we are also willing to help with Copasi and with JWS Online. Now, in case, and that's very likely, that you do not yet feel comfortable with Copasi programming, or even with JWS Online, but if you don't feel comfortable with programming yet, you can do one of three things. One is you don't do it next week, but you go to use JWS Online or the BioUML web service, or you just spend more time on this and you run through the tutorial tomorrow or something, and then when you get stuck, you ask assistance to us and we'll help you. Or you sit back and relax and you say, well, I will probably be part of a team next week and I'll be very strategic and I'll make sure that in my team there's going to be an expert modeler like Ilya or maybe like Raju. So then, of course, you don't have to worry at all, right? So, and you're free to do any of these possibilities. Okay, let's vote again. If you know, that's this thing, now it's clear. We have a little bit of quizzing to do. And tell me when you're ready. I won't do it myself because that's, so if you can just show of hands when it seems to work. Oh, I can actually see that. There's a number here. Now 4 people logged in out of 22. Now 7. Okay. 10. Oh, it's interesting. I see the people logging in already. That is an interesting new, somehow. We have 13 people logged in now. Okay. Olga is logging in. Hi, Olga. Okay. Getting there. 18 out of 22. Seems. Out of 21. Okay, let's have a go. Okay, it's hard to read. Sorry. I will read it to you. Rotterdam now. Okay. Yeah. So if you wanna, if you want to use an so this is the Rotterdam case. Rotterdam has 600,000 inhabitants, and if you would model the COVID-19 epidemic of Rotterdam, and you would do this with an agent-based program or an ODE-based program, how many objects would you have in the model? So, and you see solutions A, B, C, and D. You can hopefully read them on your phone. A says 600,000, 10, and that means your choice would be in the agent-based programs would be 600,000 objects, and in the ODE program, 10. What is the right answer? First one is the agent-based, second one is the ODE. I have 13 answers already, seems. Out of 20 participating, 14.
Should we have 2 answers here for ODE and for agent-based?
Yeah. So it's either the first for agent-based, it's 600,000, and ODE, it's 10. If that is what you think it is, it's A. When you think you need, for the agent-based program, 10 objects, and for the ODE, also 10 objects, you select B. Yeah?
Yeah, I think she asked if there are multiple correct answer, but I think the answer is no. There is just one.
I'm asking if you expect the first answer to be for first question and second for the second.
No, there's one answer that will be an answer to both questions. If you select A, you answer both questions.
I think we are misunderstood.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go. What you did. Okay, most of you did number 1, indeed, and that is the correct answer. And typically, in an agent-based program, you model every individual. I stand to be corrected, of course, but you model every individual there, so that would be 600,000 individuals. And for the ODE, you model groups like infected, not infected, immune. So that would typically be 10. In practice, the 600,000 isn't quite the 600,000 because that would be too much for present-day computers, if I understood this correctly. And what you do, the healthy people you don't model. So there is no agents for the healthy people. And then, of course, you're only modeling the diseased people, and you go down to 1% approximately. So that helps, and that is important. Okay, so that was the first one. Oh, here's the right, here's the right answer. So there you, at least you can see what the question was. So that was very good, very good. Now, in the times of internet lockdown, can be affected without increasing the social distance. Because we have internet, can you affect the lockdown? And how can you then affect it without increasing social distance? What are the possible answers here? And I wonder what they are. This is more like a quiz. Oh.
Answer, okay.
So you're not supposed to give an answer, and then we'll make a diagram of all the answers. Oh, I have it set. You should be quick, actually. Yeah, I understand now what happens. So 7 seconds. What did we do? So most people said none of the above because we are nerds. Very good. My typical answer would be I shout louder, then even my neighbors hear me through the windows. But of course, the correct answer for Donald Trump, would be to Twitter more, but you don't select that one. You select the green one, which I forgot, and you selected D. Let's go back. Green, so the green was use your telephone more, and D would use a face mask. Yeah, so those are indeed good measures. Shouting more is usually not helping. And well, some of you are nerds, so you're not even bothered. Okay, let me go to the next. So this is the podium collecting scores. We see whether there's a winner. Okay, Vero, you must be the winner. I don't know why actually, but who is Vero? Okay, Veronica, yes. Very, very good.
You were too fast. I was still thinking, and just half of people voted. You see, that only 9 people voted.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if you go to the next page, the answers disappear to us.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Just because we're running late, I don't want to run too late. Okay. So you can also answer. This is relevant for us. Again, you've seen this before. I know what I want to do next week. Maybe you change your mind. You answered this question yesterday as well, but then you hadn't seen everything yet. You haven't seen everything yet. So now I'm waiting. 10 out of 18. $13 out of 18. Okay. Maybe that is enough. Can I go on, Olga?
I voted.
You voted, okay. Okay, let me go on. So this is what we think. Okay. Actually, more of you want to adjust the existing model now, because it was 25, 50, 25, I remember yesterday. So that is good. We will take this into account. But few of you want to write an entirely new program. This is, in a way, for us, a bit good news, because it always makes us a bit nervous if you want to write an entirely new program, because then it can be very nice, but there could also be some error bug in there that cannot be resolved, that we can't find. Okay, but thank you for this. So now the next one is this one. I know what I want to do next week. What topic I want to examine. And you will send this topic, your topic of interest, to Stefania before Sunday noon. And you can either answer A, yes, I will, or B, no, I don't know, but I will figure it out. And C, no, I have no idea, but I'll see what happens on Monday. And I'll just select the topic that's there already. So we're 8 out of 18. So Ilya, is this actually the window behind you, or did you just put up a photograph of the moon?
It's a wallpaper.
Yes. Because I was thinking, you know, I see a moon, but the rest of this is not Novosibirsk.
Yeah.
That is more like New York City or Chicago.
But
Okay,
were
we're
you
in
in
10 answers.
Novosibirsk? Maybe you just don't know it, and this
It's
is
not so far
like
from
Novosibirsk looks
Novosibirsk.
like.
No, I've been to Novosibirsk.
Oh,
I mean,
you've
I
been.
know you have
Okay.
skyscrapers, but not this type. Or at least some of them don't seem to be the same.
They
We're
built
10
some.
out of 18. Okay. I was just breaking the, I think everybody has, 11 out of 18.
And I'm not voting just not to pollute your results. Because
Yeah, I think we are stuck. You can go.
Okay, it's 11. So you don't know yet, but you will figure it out before Sunday afternoon. And some of you know, so please let Stefania know. And also the B category, if you figure it out before Sunday afternoon, let Stefania know. It's also good if you talk with other people in your team or other people that are here. You can contact them. Does everybody have everybody's email, Stefania?
You can just contact them through Slack via.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can just contact them. Maybe you can even put your idea on Slack, and then other people can say, "Well, I like this idea. Let's do it together."
Yeah. I think a good idea would be to write in the general channel your idea, and then the people that like the idea can put a like or comment, because anyway, we are going to work in groups again. Yeah. So it's going to be 4 projects selected by you, of course, no more than 4, because otherwise we cannot handle the support that we can give you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much. So we'll see you next week, and we'll hear from you before Sunday noon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So our friend Fang Fuong turned up and asked a question.
Yeah.
Did you know her, like Alexei? I think she's from Luxembourg.
Sorry, I missed your question.
Fang Fuong, what was her first name?
Migun.
She is from Luxembourg. The lady who asked the question.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
You don't know her. Okay.
I don't know.
But you know, she briefly appeared on Monday and on Tuesday, and then I chased her, and then she appeared today. So you see how far my influences reach, Olga.
She's actually a postdoc.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thanks very much. That was nice, Ilya.
Yeah, it was also nice on me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Really,
nice
I
presentation.
enjoyed the day very much. Also yesterday.
Yeah.
I got much better feeling for this building team as a core with all cores.
And actually, what I figure out from the presentation that Hans is actually friend of Trump.
I'm a friend of Trump. Yes.
Look to him. He's looking like.
I made lots of advertisements for Trump. This is true. Yes.
And do you have Twitter, Hans?
Yes. Yeah. Of course, yeah. Indeed. But you know, I have lots of. I'm a bit maybe you consider me overcritical. Don't listen to me about the Dutch Prime Minister or the British Prime Minister. I have similar remarks, but they're not as bad as Trump, of course. I don't think, at least. Okay, but that is a matter of choice. And I'm right. The Americans made the right choice. I'm glad.
Hans, you need a new friend.
Yeah. But you know, we were lucky. It was just the right choice. I mean, the difference is only a few votes.
So Hans, we cannot make this video public anymore because of your statement. You will go to jail, you know? So now they have to be private. We have the mind to make it public, and now we cannot anymore. Otherwise, I will not finish my PhD because you will be in jail.
No, but don't forget, I am in the Netherlands.
It wasn't supposed to be public for White House.
But yeah. But I have anecdotes about the White House and about the CIA. That's, I mean, one of the places. This is not so. Maybe not in any other country. I was there. This is many years ago with a person from the DDR. It's just the German Democratic Republic, East Berlin, basically, East Germany. This was during the Cold War. You were not even born, right? But during the Cold War, I had a scientific friend, one of my best friends anyway. He was visiting from East Berlin, and we were walking under the Pentagon because that is what America was. You could go everywhere. You could visit the White House. You could go into the White House. This is what the country used to be. And if you look at it now, you know, it has completely deteriorated. It's a big frustration. But America used to be so free and unregulated, but now it's completely gone.
Yeah.
So, but that's about how the State Department and the Pentagon is now. Even the NIH, where I worked for a long time, 6 years, you know, you could go there 24 hours, just go into the lab, the doors would be open. This is almost in the center of Washington, D.C. Yeah. Now it's like now like a Marine base. You know, you need passports to go in and everything. Okay, anyway, that's an anecdote. That's how the word changes. Are we ready to help people next week in groups? Yeah. Ilya, you're still willing to help if they massively want to do bio-UML?
We'll be ready for that, sure.
Okay, good.
Great, thanks for this. Yeah.
And Olga will help everybody by putting their model into Fathom. Yeah, Fathom Hub. So.
Yeah, I think I will. We have prizes at HITS for such different things, like useful stuff for computer devices or something small stuff. I will ask them. I already asked them if they will give us some of them to make prizes, to announce the prizes in advance.
Yes. Yeah.
The best annotated models. The best annotated combined archive with simulation results.
Yeah, that will be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Then Ilya, sleep well.
Yeah.
And
Many
for us,
thanks.
we still have an evening to go discoing. We go to the disco now, I guess, but it will be an electronic one, so not that exciting. Okay, bye-bye.
See you, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, see you.
Bye.
Good scenes.
Good scenes, yes.
Scale, bye. I also.
Okay, see you. Oh, Raju.
Hi.
Yes, Raju, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Let me go.
You don't see your video.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, because you hide it.
I'm completely. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So how are you?
Yes, good. Good, everything is fine.
Yeah. I heard last lecture from Luxembourg. It was nice, yeah.
Yeah.
I attended. Otherwise, I just put mute and I was working.
Yeah, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Guys, are you leaving? Because I was waiting for all the people.
Okay.
I don't want to keep you
Okay,
up.
we are leaving.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, see you next week.
Bye.
Yeah.
And
See you
the
next week.
meeting. Yeah.
Bye. Bye. Bye.